Chapter 530. Daoist Kundi really had no other choice. He had searched for all the reasons he could find. He really couldn't find any other reason. Could it be that he really wanted Xianxia to become the Celestial Emperor? Although he was a little unwilling, Daoist Kundi had to admit that among the third-generation disciples of the Celestial Sect of Wonders, there was no one more suitable than him. At this point, it seemed that everything was a foregone conclusion. But at this moment, Saint Jianghu, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly spoke. "Teacher, Xianxia still needs to be in charge of the netherworld. He really can't leave." As soon as he said this, the expressions of the three pure ones changed drastically. Yes. How could they forget this? Xianxia was the only force of the Celestial Sect of Wonders in the netherworld. If he ran to be the Celestial Emperor, then the situation that the Celestial Sect of Wonders had created in the netherworld with great difficulty would be all gone. Therefore, Xianxia could not leave the netherworld. Although the position of Celestial Emperor was important, it was obvious that the Celestial Sect of Wonders' plan for the netherworld was more important. In this way, Xianxia could not become the Celestial Emperor. As for sending an incarnation to the netherworld after becoming the Celestial Emperor? Stop joking. The incarnation of the Celestial Emperor actually ran to the netherworld to be a duke. Wasn't that saying that the heaven realm was inferior to the netherworld? Whose face was this slapping? Sigh. This child, what a pity. At this moment, Dao ancestor Hong Jun sighed and said with slight regret. This was to set the tone for this matter. They could not mess up the Celestial Sect of Wonders' plan for the netherworld. The Grandmaster of Heaven's smug expression also began to become a little defeated. Just a little more. If it was for other reasons, the Grandmaster of Heaven could still refute it, but there was nothing he could do about this matter. However, in his heart, he secretly hated Saint Jianghu. He planned to ask him for advice on the immortal slaying sword formation after leaving the Purple Cloud Palace, so that he would know that there were some things that could not be said. Even the way Feng Zichen looked at Jianghu had changed. He was hesitating whether he should secretly kill a few of his disciples to teach him an unforgettable lesson. He could not defeat Zhuan, but Zhuan's disciples could not defeat him either. If he could not deal with Zhuan, he could deal with the Western sect. Ever since Zhuan attacked the human tribe, Feng Zichen felt that he had been enlightened. When dealing with shameless people, you either have to be stronger than them, or you have to be more shameless than them. Feng Zichen could not do it for the time being, but he could do it more shamelessly than them. Feng Zichen said that he could give it a try. After understanding this, Feng Zichen realized that he was wrong. He had set the wrong target. Taking revenge on Zhuan, it was not necessary to attack them. He could attack the Western sect and their disciples. The Western sect was where Zhuan's efforts were. Only by destroying that place would the two of them feel pain and despair. Compared to the destruction of the Western sect, the physical injuries caused by Zhuan were of no use other than embarrassing them. Saints would not die, nor would they be injured. Moreover, what was more satisfying revenge than destroying the enemy's efforts with one's own hands? These were taught to Feng Zichen by Zhuan. If they had not attacked the human tribe, Feng Zichen would not have understood this penguin. If others did not follow the rules, why should he follow the rules? Since Zhuan could attack the ordinary people of the human tribe, Feng Zichen could also attack the disciples of the Western sect. The weak followed the rules and the strong made the rules. What a pity! Even everyone secretly felt pity for Xianxia. How could a mere duke of the netherworld be compared to the Celestial Emperor? Xianxia had suffered a huge loss this time. But how could his personal interests be compared to the interests of the Xian sect as a whole? In the future, Xianxia will have his own benefits. After thinking about it, Dao ancestor Hong Jun also felt that Xianxia had suffered a loss, so he promised. Dao ancestor is wise. Everyone hurriedly flattered. Dao ancestor, since there is no suitable candidate for the saint, what do you think of me? Do I have the qualifications to seek the position of Celestial Emperor? Suddenly, Feng Zichen stood up and recommended himself to Dao ancestor. Opportunities were fought for by oneself. Regardless of whether he succeeded or not, he had to give it a try. Only then would he not regret it. Otherwise, if he did not even try, how could he dare to say that he had worked hard? Besides, what if he succeeded? What if the heavenly Dao really wanted him to be the Celestial Emperor? Everything before was just his guess. What if he was thinking too much? Tao ancestor Hongjun did not say that he could not be the celestial emperor. Therefore, he still had to give it a try. If he succeeded, he would make a huge profit. Even if he failed, he would not lose anything. But if he missed this opportunity because of his cowardice, then it would be a huge loss for him. Moreover, in the world, even if Di Jun was reborn, he would not dare to say that he was more qualified than Feng Zichen to be the celestial emperor. Under such circumstances, even if Tao ancestor Hong Jun rejected Feng Zichen's recommendation, he would have to give him a lot of benefits. Otherwise, he would not be able to convince the masses. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. At this moment, everyone in the Purple Cloud Palace looked at Feng Zichen with an extremely complicated gaze. This scene was really too familiar. Countless years ago, there had been two people who had done the same thing in this place. They took the initiative to ask Tao ancestor Hong Jun if they could become the celestial emperor and rule the primordial world. Those two people were Di Jun, Tai. After that, the Tao ancestor nodded. The era that belonged to Di Jun, Tai, had arrived. It was as if history was repeating itself. A familiar scene appeared in front of everyone again. The difference was that the protagonist of the story had changed. It had changed to a younger and more powerful god. The sad thing was that they were still supporting characters. It was also this scene that reminded everyone. How could the celestial emperor be chosen? Chosen. Could he become a qualified celestial emperor? Everyone retracted their gazes from Feng Zichen and looked at Tao ancestor Hong Jun. They were waiting for his answer. Was it the same as countless years ago? In terms of birth, the Ziwei Starlord was born as the Lord of the Stars and ruled the boundless starry sky. He is also of the same origin as the heavenly Tao and has the noblest background. He is the most authentic Pangu. In terms of strength, his realm has even entered the half-step primordial chaos realm. Few people in the primordial world can defeat him. With the help of Zhouxing, he can even fight with a saint for a long time without falling into a disadvantage. He can be said to be the top great divine ability of the primordial world. In terms of merit, he has the merit of saving the world. If it weren't for the Ziwei Starlord repairing the boundless starry sky, how could the apocalyptic calamity of the primordial world be resolved so easily? According to this, the Ziwei Starlord's background, strength, and merit can be said to be perfect. He is simply the best candidate for the celestial emperor. Even if Di Jun comes back to life, he might not be able to compete with him. While Tao ancestor Hong Jun was silent, everything about the Ziwei Starlord was slowly told by everyone. At this moment, everyone suddenly realized that there was no need to fight. Wasn't the most suitable candidate for the celestial emperor always here? Ziwei. Speaking of which, you are the most suitable candidate for the celestial emperor. It can even be said that you are a natural celestial emperor. After a long silence, Tao ancestor Hong Jun said to Feng Zichen. This was the truth. But Feng Zichen was not willing to listen. Because the meaning in his words was already very obvious. The Tao ancestor did not want him to be the celestial emperor. Otherwise, couldn't he just agree directly? Why did he have to talk so much nonsense? Didn't he see that after Tao ancestor Hong Jun said this, the three pure ones and the others all heaved a long sigh of relief? If that's the case, why didn't Tao ancestor choose me? Feng Zichen was angry, so he did not prepare anything and asked directly. It's not that I don't want to, but I really can't. Tao ancestor Hong Jun was not angry. He understood Feng Zichen's current mood very well. Why? At this point, Feng Zichen really wanted to know what reason Tao ancestor Hong Jun could come up with. Because of Zhouxing. In the battle between the liches and demons, Zhouxing was too damaged. Even the heavenly Tao did not have enough strength to repair it. As for you, you can forcefully plunder enough strength from the chaos outside the realm to repair Zhouxing without consuming the origin of heaven and earth. You even have extra strength to repair the broken world. Do you know? How surprised was the heavenly Tao when he saw this scene. Therefore from then on, he decided to leave you in the boundless starry sky. Because the heavenly Tao needs you to repair Zhouxing, so before Zhouxing is repaired, he does not want you to leave the boundless starry sky. In fact, when you fought with the saint, the heavenly Tao probably schemed against you to keep you in the boundless starry sky. Therefore, you can't leave the boundless starry sky. And being unable to leave the boundless starry sky means that you are not qualified to become the celestial emperor. Dao ancestor Hong Jun's voice sounded in Feng Zichen's sea of consciousness, explaining all of this to him. Because the answer was too shocking and involved the heavenly Dao's plan, Dao ancestor Hong Jun did not announce it. Instead, he used his spiritual will to tell Feng Zichen. What? Feng Zichen was really shocked. He had never thought that the reason why the heavenly Dao did not let him become the celestial emperor was because of this. It sounded ridiculous, right? But Feng Zichen believed it. This seemed to be something that the heavenly Dao would do. That was because the heavenly Dao did not have intelligence and only relied on instinct. The distinction between good and evil, right and wrong, were all imposed on the heavenly Dao by later generations. The heavenly Dao itself did not have these. What good and evil, what right and wrong? In front of the heavenly Dao, there were only things that were beneficial to the primordial world and things that were harmful to the primordial world. As long as it was beneficial to the primordial world, regardless of whether it was good or evil, right or wrong, the heavenly Dao would support it. By the same logic, as long as it was harmful to the primordial world, even if it was just, the heavenly Dao would oppose it. In the simple thoughts of the heavenly Dao, Feng Zichen could repair Zhouxing, so he was beneficial to the world. Since that was the case, he naturally had to think of a way to keep him in the boundless starry sky. For this, sacrificing some of Feng Zichen's interests was nothing. The heavenly Dao was the most selfless and selfish. For the interests of the world, he could give up everything. Sacrificing Feng Zichen was nothing. The heavenly Dao is fair. Since you want me to repair the boundless starry sky, you will definitely give me some benefits, right? After thinking about it, Feng Zichen already understood that unless he could repair Zhouxing immediately, otherwise, he would not be able to leave the boundless starry sky before Zhouxing was repaired. Therefore, he had no chance of becoming the celestial emperor. Since that was the case, he had to ask for some benefits to make up for his losses. Benefits? The best place in the primordial world and the entire boundless starry sky have been given to you. What other benefits do you want? Dao ancestor Hong Jun said unhappily. That was the boundless starry sky, one of the most important places in the primordial world. It could be said that if one controlled this place, they would have the capital to dominate the primordial world. Di Jun relied on this place to make a fortune to fight against the wizard race. It was not an exaggeration to say that the Lord of the boundless starry sky was half a celestial emperor. The Lord of Ziwei Star could have such a noble status because he was the Lord of the boundless starry sky. How about the position of the Deputy Lord of the Heavens and Earth? It's second only to the Celestial Emperor, and also represents the next Celestial Emperor. Dao ancestor Hong Jun scolded with a smile, showing the sincerity of the heavenly Dao. That's it? Feng Zichen was very disdainful of this. How could these things be compared with the position of the Celestial Emperor? Forget it. The poor Wei will give you a copy of her cultivation experience over the years. After that, I will give you a fragment of the creation jade disc. What do you think? From Feng Zichen's expression, one could see his dissatisfaction. Dao ancestor Hong Jun was a little helpless about this and could only say again. Cultivation experience? Creation jade disc fragment. Dao ancestor. You're really generous. I'll be polite then. Hearing this, Feng Zichen's eyes lit up and he hurriedly nodded in agreement. Regardless of whether it was the cultivation experience of the Dao ancestor or the fragment of the creation jade disc, they were all first-class treasures. The former could let Feng Zichen see the path ahead, and the latter was even more impressive. It was a fragment of the heavenly Dao treasure that contained all the principles of the primordial world. It could allow one to get closer to the Dao. Dao ancestor Hong Jun was able to integrate the Dao because of this item. From this, one could see how extraordinary the creation jade disc was. Take it. With a wave of his hand, Dao ancestor Hong Jun gave his cultivation experience and the creation jade disc to Feng Zichen. The cultivation experience of the Dao ancestor was recorded in a jade book. The jade book was pure white and flawless, filled with connate Dao runes. It was at least a superior grade connate spirit treasure. At a glance, one could tell that it was produced by the Dao ancestor. The fragment of the good fortune jade disc was a small piece of purple jade. It was covered with complicated patterns, which made people feel dizzy just by looking at it. Feng Zichen did not dare to look at it anymore. He put away the two treasures and left. He knew the principle of going too far was as bad as falling short. The Dao ancestor had even given out the fragment of the creation jade disc. It was obvious that he had reached his limit. If he wanted more, he would not be able to get anything good. Instead, he would offend people. It was better to take a step back. With this favor, he could not refuse Dao ancestor Hong Jun if he needed help in the future. Overall, this deal was still a loss, but it was not too much. Returning to his seat, Feng Zichen thought silently. As for what had happened just now, he did not know what method Dao ancestor Hong Jun had used. In short, no one saw anything. They only knew that the Dao ancestor had rejected Feng Zichen. Chapter 531. Master, the position of Celestial Emperor is of great importance. We don't dare to make a decision. It's better for Master to make a decision. Not long after Feng Zichen left, the Grand Pure One stepped forward and said, since the candidate they recommended could not obtain the approval of everyone, they would let Dao ancestor Hong Jun decide personally. In this way, who would dare to have any objections? Yes. Haotian Yao Qi, the two of you come forward. Hearing that, Dao ancestor Hong Jun nodded and called the Haotian Yao Qi over. The Haotian Yao Qi, who was watching the show at the side, clearly did not expect that there would be something between them. Therefore, after hearing Dao ancestor Hong Jun's words, they were clearly stunned. When they came back to their senses, they hurriedly ran forward and bowed to Dao ancestor Hong Jun. Disciple Haotian, Yao Qi, greets Master. May I know what instructions Master has for us to come here? Thinking of the content of the conversation just now, the Haotian Yao Qi clearly sensed something. Her heart was a little bumpy and she asked excitedly. The poor Wei wants to make the two of you the Celestial Emperor and Empress to rule the primordial world. Are you willing? Dao ancestor Hong Jun did not stand on ceremony and said bluntly. Whoosh! As soon as these words were said, the entire place was in an uproar. Who was the Haotian Yao Qi? She was just a child beside Dao ancestor Hong Jun. How could she become the Celestial Emperor with such a status? How could everyone be convinced? Although the Haotian Yao Qi had also listened to the Dao when the Dao ancestor preached and was considered one of the 3,000 guests of the Purple Cloud Palace. However, because of their status, who would take these two seriously? Who would treat them as fellow Daoists? No. They were just child Daoists. How could they be compared to them? Even Zhuanti, who was the least liked back then, looked down on how Tian and Yao Qiwan had to know that when the Dao ancestor first preached the Dao, Zhuanti was late. If the Haotian Yao Qi had not taken pity on him and reopened the Purple Cloud Palace for the two of them would not have been able to get the 3,000 guests of the Purple Cloud Palace, let alone the position of saint. It could be said that Haotian and Yao Qi had become Zhuanti. Logically speaking, with this relationship, the relationship between Zhuanti and the Haotian Yao Qi should be very good. But that was not the case. There was no relationship between them at all. In the view of Zhuanti, Haotian Jade Lake was a Taoist child. It was her duty to open the door for them. They did not owe the two of them anything. Wasn't it because he looked down on them that he had such thoughts? If it was some other innate god that opened the door for them, would Zhuanti be like this? Most likely. He had already accepted this favor. Zhuanti didn't think that they were late first. Even if the Haotian Jade Pool didn't open the door for them, no one could find fault with them. On the contrary, the Haotian Jade Pool was taking a huge risk to open the door for the two of them. But even so, they did not receive a word of thanks from Zhuanti. What greeted the two of them was still the same contemptuous attitude. Are you willing? Dao ancestor Hongjuan's casual words brought an unimaginable shock to Haotian. He was almost stunned by the huge surprise that came out of nowhere. Previously, he was still guessing who would become the supreme ruler of the primordial world. However, in a flash, the flower landed on his head. Surprise! It really caught him off guard. Although he had long known that the Dao ancestor would arrange a good future for him, he didn't expect that the Dao ancestor would directly give him the position of Celestial Emperor. This was more than good. That was the position of Celestial Emperor. There was nothing more precious than this in the primordial world. He wouldn't even exchange it for a primordial treasure. Excited, Haotian was about to agree. But just as he was about to open his mouth, he suddenly felt that the surrounding atmosphere had suddenly changed. It became extremely solemn. Terrifying pressure, with an invincible aura, came from behind the Haotian Jade Pool, oppressing them until they couldn't speak. At this time, everyone present made a move. The existence that they had looked down on in the past was now going to be above them. How could the proud people tolerate this? Therefore they made a move. Even in front of Dao ancestor Hongjun, they did not hesitate to make a move. They wanted to use their powerful pressure to force the Haotian Jade Pool to reject Dao ancestor Hongjun's proposal. Although Dao ancestor Hongjun had decided to let these two become the Celestial Emperor and Empress, this was not forced. If the Haotian Jade Pool took the initiative to refuse, Dao ancestor Hongjun could not force it. As for whether it would offend Dao ancestor Hongjun because of this, everyone was actually not worried. If Dao ancestor Hongjun was really so stingy, he would not have become the Dao ancestor that everyone admired. Pressure. An unprecedented pressure. The pressure brought by everyone's combined strength. It was as if the Kunlun Divine Mountain was pressing down on him. The Haotian Jade Pool was almost out of breath. Haotian's strength was extraordinary. He could still hold on for a while. However, the Jade Pool's strength was far inferior to Haotian's. Under the pressure of everyone, he gradually showed signs of being unable to hold on. His face gradually turned pale, and drops of cold sweat dripped from his forehead. Dao ancestor Hongjun did not say anything about this. If the Haotian Jade Pool could not even overcome this little difficulty, then it was better to give up the position of Celestial Emperor and Empress as soon as possible. One must know that after they became the Celestial Emperor and Empress, any of the difficulties that they would have to face would be countless times more difficult than the current predicament. Without powerful strength, even if they were forcefully pushed to the position of Celestial Emperor and Empress, they would not be stable and might even be in danger. There were too many lawless people in the primordial world. What could they not do? What was the big deal about killing a Celestial Emperor? Countless people died every day in the primordial world. Why couldn't there be a Celestial Emperor among them? A long time ago, the Haotian Jade Pool had been by Dao ancestor Hongjuan's side. That seemed to be before they became saints. After so many years, even if they had a heart of stone, they would still have feelings for each other. Therefore there was a huge opportunity now, and Dao ancestor Hongjun was willing to help them. But the opportunity was given to them. Whether they could seize it or not depended on their own choice. For a moment, Dao ancestor Hongjun looked at Haotian with a deeper gaze, like a bottomless abyss. He was looking forward to Haotian's choice. It shouldn't be like this. At this moment, Feng Zichen was staring at the Haotian Jade Pool with a very puzzled gaze. Among the people who threatened the Haotian Jade Pool, he was naturally included. However, different from everyone else's goal, Feng Zichen's original intention was not to force the two of them to bow their heads, but to test Haotian's strength. No matter how bad Haotian's performance was in the future, he was still the Celestial Emperor. And how could someone who could become the Celestial Emperor not have some skills? Haotian's strength must be unimaginably strong. Otherwise, he would not be able to sit firmly in the position of Celestial Emperor. This could be seen from the attitude of the three pure ones in the future. One had to know that the cause of the God Conferment tribulation originated from Haotian. It was precisely because he complained to Dao ancestor Hongjun that the God Conferment tribulation broke out, causing the Chan school and Jie school to suffer heavy losses. After suffering such a huge loss, wouldn't the three pure ones hate Haotian to death? But even so, they only thought of ways to reduce Haotian's power, instead of finding an opportunity to kill Haotian. From this, it could be seen that Haotian must have something that the three pure ones were afraid of, so they did not dare to act rashly. The three purities were famous for their boldness. They even dared to destroy the primordial world, so a mere celestial emperor naturally could not scare them. However, they did not dare to attack Haotian. The reason behind this was truly frightening to think about. Therefore, Feng Zichen had always felt that Haotian's strength was very, very strong. Even if he was not as good as Di Jun, he was not far away. Haotian, the vast heaven. Haotian dared to use the name heaven. Presumably, his strength was also very extraordinary. Otherwise, he would not be able to suppress this name. In the primordial world, the name of a god was not randomly given. It could, to a certain extent, reflect a person's future achievements. Moreover, if one's strength was not worthy of the name, they would be counterattacked by luck and fall into a calamity, leading to a fatal disaster. It was precisely because of the above considerations that Feng Zichen took the opportunity of everyone threatening the Haotian Jade Pool to test Haotian's strength. But the result was beyond his expectations. Hao Tian's strength was far from as strong as he had imagined. Under the pressure of everyone, he actually showed signs of being unable to hold on. This was very unreasonable. Could it be that Hao Tian had hidden his cultivation? Thinking of this, Feng Zichen exerted even more pressure on Hao Tian. He wanted to see if Hao Tian was really as weak as he appeared to be now. If Hao Tian was as Feng Zichen had guessed and had hidden his strength, then this pressure would not be able to hurt him at all. If Feng Zichen had guessed wrongly, Hao Tian's strength was not as strong as he had imagined. Although this pressure was not enough to kill Hao Tian, it was enough to seriously injure him. Then this was what he had asked for. Wanting to ascend to the position of Celestial Emperor with his insignificant strength was an act of courting death. In fact, in Feng Zichen's heart, he was more inclined to believe that Hao Tian's strength was low. In this way, he could take advantage of the opportunity to cripple Hao Tian. Don't blame Feng Zichen for being black-hearted. Who asked the two of them to have enmity between them? No matter who became the Celestial Emperor, it was considered a great enmity with Feng Zichen. If all the candidates for the Celestial Emperor were killed, then his chance would come. Faintly, Feng Zichen had an unrealistic idea in his heart. Yes or no? At this time, Hao Tian's heart was really tangled to the extreme. That was the highest karmic position in the untainted land, and it was just placed in front of him. As long as he nodded, he could ascend to the sky in one step and become the supreme celestial emperor respected by all the heavens. It would be a lie to say that he was not tempted. Who did not envy Di Jun's prestige in the past? But every time Hao Tian wanted to agree, the terrifying gazes that came from behind him brought him great pressure, making him unable to speak. The position of the celestial emperor was tempting, but the hostility from many great magicians was also terrifying. Becoming the celestial emperor was certainly a step into the sky, but the price was to offend all the great magicians in the untainted land. In comparison, the position of the celestial emperor seemed a little light. After all, he had offended so many great magicians. Even if he really became the celestial emperor, it would be difficult for him to be stable. So, it was better to refuse. Under the great pressure, a thought of giving up gradually appeared in Hao Tian's heart. As time passed, it became bigger and bigger, and soon filled his heart. However, in the depths of Hao Tian's heart, there was a trace of unwillingness that slowly grew, causing him to be unable to make up his mind to give up the position of the celestial emperor. Why couldn't he and the Jade Pool become the supreme beings of heaven and earth and rule the untainted land? The Tao ancestor had clearly agreed. Why did those great magicians still come out to stop him? Especially Zhu and Ti, why didn't they come out to help? Or even join forces with them to pressure him? One had to know that if he and the Jade Pool hadn't taken the risk to open the door of the Purple Cloud Palace, how could the two of them have today's achievements? Did they really not care about the friendship of the past at all? One question after another appeared in Hao Tian's heart, causing the unwillingness in his heart to grow rapidly. Gradually, it was on par with the thought of giving up. You've gone too far. Hao Tian, who was in a dilemma, glanced out of the corner of his eye and saw the Jade Pool, who was on the verge of collapse under the pressure of everyone. For a moment, his intuition was about to burst, and an indescribable anger surged in his heart. Endless years of companionship had long formed an indelible relationship between Hao Tian and the Jade Pool. It could be said that the current Jade Pool was Hao Tian's everything. Seeing the Jade Pool being forced to this point, how could Hao Tian not be angry? He could be wronged, but the Jade Pool couldn't. The Jade Pool and I were born as Tao children, so you don't like us? It's ridiculous. In the untainted land, identity is very important. But in the end, strength is everything. Didn't you look down on the Jade Pool and me? Then today, I will take the Jade Pool and become an existence above you. Driven by anger, the unwillingness in Hao Tian's heart burned crazily. It was as hot as the scorching sun, igniting the hot blood in his body. Hot blood flowed in his heart, stimulating his heroic spirit. At this moment, Hao Tian made up his mind. The Heavenly Emperor, no matter what, he was determined to be. Not for himself, but for the Jade Pool. The reputation of a Tao child was not so good after all, and he was looked down upon everywhere. Even the Tao child of the Tao ancestor was the same. Therefore, Hao Tian wanted to give the Jade Pool an incomparably noble identity. And in the untainted land, was there anything more noble than the identity of the Heavenly Empress? An incomparably powerful aura slowly rose from Hao Tian's body, forcing back all the pressure that surged from behind him, and at the same time, protecting the jade pool. Teacher, Hao Tian is willing. Hao Tian is willing to be the heavenly emperor, rule the heavenly court, and sweep away the chaos of the untainted land. Under the pressure of everyone, Hao Tian straightened his back, looked straight into Dao ancestor Hongjuan's eyes, and said word by word. Boom. After Hao Tian said this, his aura also reached its peak. An aura that belonged to the great perfection of sage to be suddenly poured out, fiercely colliding with the pressure of everyone, stirring up a terrifying wind in the purple cloud palace. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Invisible waves of air spread, forming gusts of wind that rippled in the purple cloud palace, blowing everyone's hair and rolling up their clothes. Chapter 532. But at this moment, no one cared about this. That was because they were all shocked by the strength that great heaven had displayed. The great perfection of the sage to be. Hao Tian, a little Taoist child, actually had the strength of the great perfection of the sage to be. It was really too shocking. One had to know that this kind of strength, even among the 3,000 guests of the Purple Cloud Palace, was also the top batch, stronger than most people. How could it be? Among the people present, those powerful figures whose cultivation level was lower than Hao Tian's could not help but feel ashamed at this moment. In vain, they thought that their status was noble and looked down on Hao Tian, who was born as a Taoist child. But in the end, their cultivation level was actually inferior to his. It was really embarrassing. At this moment, no one dared to come out and suppress Hao Tian. It was not because they were afraid of him, but because after Hao Tian nodded, if they attacked him, they would not give face to Dao ancestor Hongjun. If they offended Dao ancestor Hongjun because of this, how could they survive in the primordial world in the future? That's more like it. Seeing this, Feng Zichen nodded in satisfaction and gradually withdrew his pressure. He was not surprised that Hao Tian had such strength. One had to know that the one who accompanied the Dao ancestor the longest was not the three pure ones, but the Hao Tian jade pool. Even a pig could become a sage to be if it stayed by Dao ancestor Hongjuan's side all year round. Moreover, Hao Tian was not a pig. On the contrary, his talent was very good, and he could be ranked in the upper class among the 3,000 guests of the Purple Cloud mortal world. Hao Tian's background was also very big. He was formed from the Chaos Jade and could be called a top Khanate god fiend in the primordial world, only inferior to the three pure ones and the others. In the primordial world, those who could be related to chaos were not simple. If not, why would Dao ancestor Hongjun recommend Hao Tian to be the celestial emperor? He was not old and confused. How could he not know that without absolute strength, what was the difference between ascending to the position of celestial emperor and courting death? It was because he knew Hao Tian's strength and thought that he was qualified to lead the primordial world that Dao ancestor Hongjun recommended him. In the primordial world, although a background was important, strength was more important. Without strength, no matter how strong one's background was, it was useless. The great perfection of the sage to be. Hao Tian, you will have fun in the future. Looking at Hao Tian, Feng Zichen's eyes flickered. After knowing Hao Tian's true strength, it would be much easier to scheme against him in the future. Otherwise, just guessing Hao Tian's true strength would take up most of his energy. All right. Very good. Regarding Vast Heaven's choice, Dao ancestor Hongjun was very gratified. Everyone was threatening Hao Tian, so why didn't he do anything? He was waiting for Hao Tian to explode. He naturally knew Hao Tian's strength, but the others did not. Without showing extraordinary strength, how could everyone be convinced that he had ascended to the position of celestial emperor? Although with Dao ancestor Hongjuan's prestige, he could completely forcefully push Hao Tian onto the throne of heavenly emperor, and everyone also did not dare to object. However, in that case it would be disadvantageous for you Hao Tian to rule the primordial world in the future. Therefore, the Dao ancestor let everyone take action, forcing Hao Tian to have no choice but to reveal his strength. In this way, he would take the opportunity to settle this matter so that everyone would have nothing to say. Dao ancestor Hongjun was still very satisfied with Hao Tian. Regardless of background, talent, or comprehension, they were all top-notch. But unfortunately, his personality was flawed, and he liked to hide his strength too much. Originally, it was a good thing to hide his strength. After all, the primordial world was still too dangerous, and it was always good to keep a trump card. However, it might not be a good thing to hide his strength too much. Just like how one would really become a pig after pretending to be a pig for a long time. Therefore, based on the above considerations, Tao ancestor Hongjun did not want this disciple to be crippled just like that, so he decided to push him to the position of Celestial Emperor to temper his character. After becoming Celestial Emperor, he would not only have great power, but also unimaginable pressure. As long as he could withstand this pressure, Hao Tian would definitely undergo an unprecedented transformation. In the future, he might be able to cultivate to primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. Hao Tian, I'll give you this Hao Tian mirror to help you monitor the heavens. Tao ancestor Hongjun waved his hand and gave the supreme grade Khanate spirit treasure, the Hao Tian mirror, to Hao Tian. This mirror had the ability to search the heavens and earth. It could reflect everything that happened in the primordial world. It was a top-notch auxiliary treasure in the primordial world. Thank you, teacher. Hao Tian took the Hao Tian mirror and thanked him. Tao ancestor Hongjun did not say anything and looked at Yao Qi. Yao Qi, I'll give you this golden hairpin and this Khanate spirit root immortality peach tree. I hope you can help Hao Tian well. As he spoke, a golden hairpin and a peach tree flew out of his sleeve and landed in Yao Qi's hand. Thank you, teacher. After receiving air bow, Yao Qi was overjoyed and quickly stood up to thank him. It was no wonder that Yao Qi was so happy. Both the golden hairpin and the Khanate immortality peach tree were top-notch treasures in the primordial world. The former was a supreme-grade Khanate spirit treasure and had the ability to cut through space. The latter was one of the top 10 spirit roots in the primordial world. It was not much worse than a Khanate spirit treasure. You may leave. Tao ancestor Hongjun waved his hand to ask Hao Tian and Yao Qi to leave. Just as he was about to ask everyone to leave, a heavenly will suddenly appeared in front of everyone. Under the Celestial Emperor, there should be another 4 great emperors to rule the primordial world. As soon as this was said, the gods were in an uproar. Everyone was smart. How could they not see the true intention of the heavenly Tao's order? This was clearly to reduce the power of the Celestial Emperor. Regarding this, the Saint and Feng Zichen were naturally extremely happy. The rest of the people had the mentality that it had nothing to do with them. As for Tao ancestor Hongjun, his expression was indifferent. No one could tell what he was thinking. As the person involved, Hao Tian's face darkened. His expression was extremely ugly. Clearly, he was suppressing his anger. He had not officially ascended the throne yet, but his power had been reduced. No one would be happy if they faced such a thing. It was already considered good that Hao Tian could hold back and not curse out loud. Sigh. This is the will of the heavens. How can a person go against it? Tao ancestor Hongjun sighed and said slowly, do you have any candidates in mind for the position of the 4 royals? The will of the heavens could not be violated. It spoke of Hongjun's helplessness. Even someone as powerful as him could not violate the orders of the heavenly Tao. May I ask, Master, what are the positions of the 4 great emperors? After thinking for a while, the Grand Pure One asked. They wanted to recommend him, but they did not even know what the 4 royals were going to do. How could they recommend him? The Lord of Myriad Stars, Great Emperor Ziwei, the Lord of Myriad Gods, Great Emperor Go Chen, the Lord of Myriad Thunder, Great Emperor Chongshang, and the Lord of Myriad Lands, Empress Hutu. Tao ancestor Hongjun calculated for a moment and said to everyone. Hiss! Hearing this, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The heavenly Tao was really ruthless. It had reduced more than half of the Celestial Emperor's power. In the future, if the 4 royals joined forces, they would probably be able to directly take over the Celestial Emperor. Heavenly Emperor Hao Tian was really a coward. He had not even taken office, but more than half of his power had been reduced. For a moment, everyone looked at Hao Tian with eyes filled with schadenfreude. Previously, they thought that he was lucky enough to become the Celestial Emperor in one step. But now, it seemed that it was not the case. Hao Tian's face was obviously darker. The aura on his body was fluctuating. It was obvious that he was trying his best to endure. If Yao Qi had not been holding him back, who knew what he would have done? Buzz, buzz, buzz. Suddenly, the void rippled, and the will of heaven appeared again. 2 talismans condensed out of thin air and floated in the middle of the purple cloud palace. This is... Everyone was shocked. They did not know what the heavenly Tao was going to do and why it had to appear twice in a row. Tao ancestor Hongjun reached out and took one of the 2 talismans. He opened it in front of everyone. On it was written, "The Lady of Earth is, the heavenly Tao is great and virtuous, and the Lady of Earth is the Earth Emperor. Limitless and boundless, respected by heaven and earth." In this way, one of the four royals, the Lady of Earth, was decided. It was the Lady of Earth. In fact, the Lady of Earth was not worthy of the Lady of Earth. Although this deity position was noble and was one of the four royals of the primordial world, it could be said to be the highest karmic position in the world. However, what kind of identity was the Lady of Earth? She was the first saint of the Tao. She was even more noble than the 6 saints of the heavenly Tao, and was second only to Tao ancestor Hong Jun. A mere 4 royals was naturally not worthy of her. It would be better if it was the celestial emperor. However, the heavenly Tao had no choice. The Lady of Earth was obviously prepared for the Lady of Earth. One had to know that the Lady of Earth had the title of Mother of Earth. She was the well-deserved ruler of the land. If the ruler of all lands, the Empress of Earth, were to be given to someone else, where would Empress Earth belong? How could there be 2 emperors on Earth? Wasn't this forcing the Lady of Earth to kill? Therefore, no matter what, the deity position of the Lady of Earth had to be given to the Lady of Earth. Go! After knowing the thoughts of the heavenly Tao, Tao ancestor Hong Jun directly sent the talisman to the netherworld. He could not be the master of the Lady of Earth. The choice was up to the Lady of Earth herself. In the netherworld, the Lady of Earth looked at the talisman in front of her. After hesitating for a moment, she chose to accept the talisman. However, the position of Empress Earth Emperor would not be taken by him, but by Ping Xian. A mysterious yellow light rose from the Lady of Earth's body, and gradually turned into a woman who looked very similar to the Lady of Earth. It was her merit incarnation, Ping Xian. Back then, the heavenly Tao wanted to use the merit chi to reconstruct the Lady of Earth's physical body. But who knew that the Pango bloodline in the Lady of Earth's body was too domineering and directly removed the merit chi from her body. Since she could not absorb it, the Lady of Earth refined it into an incarnation based on the principle of not wasting it, which was the current Ping Xian. After Ping Xian appeared, she did not stand on ceremony and directly stepped forward to take the heavenly Tao talisman. Then with a boom, the heavenly Tao talisman scattered and turned into billions of light spots, covering Ping Xian's body. Swish! A divine light flashed, and a luxurious imperial robe appeared on Ping Xian's body. The Lady of Earth. The birth of the Lady of Earth. Heaven and earth immediately reacted. Golden flowers fell from the sky, and golden lotuses gushed out from the ground. The mysterious sound of the great Tao resounded among the heavenly emperors. Praise the Lady of Earth. Praise the sky-bearing empire's great virtue and the Earth Empress. 9 Splendor Jade Palace. 7 Treasures Imperial Room. The Lady of Earth is in charge of yin and yang. The Tao promotes honor and contains great light, and the virtue is stored in gentleness and purity. Imitate Haotian, and nurture the beauty of Kuan Yuan. Flow of things, and form the benevolence of a mother. You is dependent, and the mountains and rivers form a shield. Great sorrow and great wish, great saint and great benevolence. Heaven-bearing technique, Earth Empress. Between heaven and earth, there were sounds of chanting. It was like the whispers of the gods, but also like the whispers of all living beings, congratulating the birth of a great and honorable existence. Praise the Lady of Earth. Praise the sky-bearing empire's great virtue and the Earth Empress. In a trance, a great figure seemed to appear in front of all living beings, making them subconsciously worship and offer their blessings. Purple Cloud Palace. Everyone was full of praises. The commotion caused by the birth of the 4 royals was comparable to when a sage achieved Tao. It was obvious that the heavenly Tao valued them. What a great opportunity! Seeing this, even those who did not value the 4 royals before could not help but re-evaluate them. The heavenly Tao had personally come to create momentum for them. Who would dare to underestimate the 4 royals? Swish! Retracting their gazes from below, everyone looked at Feng Zichen in unison. Obviously, the other heavenly Tao talisman was prepared for him. Because other than the Star Master of Ziwei, who else was qualified to become the great emperor of Ziwei? If it was not for him, then a great battle was inevitable. The Star Master of Ziwei would never allow outsiders to taint Ziwei's star. Sure enough, Tao ancestor Hong Jun opened the heavenly Tao talisman. On it was written Feng Zichen, the Star Master of Ziwei is Middle Heaven Great Emperor of North Pole Ziwei. controls all things and commands all stars. Infinite and infinite, respected by heaven and earth. Without the slightest hesitation, Feng Zichen stepped forward. Boom! The heavenly Dao talisman shattered with a loud bang. Dao light flashed all over the sky, turning into a purple imperial robe that draped over Feng Zichen's body. Middle Heaven Great Emperor of North Pole Ziwei. Heaven and earth shook again, and the phenomenon that had just dissipated reappeared. Heavenly flowers, golden lotuses, and Dao voices appeared one by one. Praise the Great Emperor of North Pole Ziwei. Middle Heaven Great Emperor of North Pole Ziwei. Daluo Celestial Palace, Ziwei Star Palace. He lives high in the North Pole, above the Middle Heaven. His Dharma name is Golden Wheel Blazing, and his Dao name is Jade Dipper Xian Zun. Jade Dipper, Qi Qijing, and Qi Qijing, the heavenly geography, the sun, moon and star mansions, the ecliptic purple boundary, the master of all things. Ruler of all heavens, great sorrow and great wish, great sage and great mercy, myriad star sect master, limitless origin emperor, Zhongtian Ziwei, great emperor of North Pole. Between heaven and earth, the mysterious Dao seal once again resounded, celebrating the birth of great Emperor Ziwei. At the same time, Feng Zichen's Ziwei Emperor shadow also appeared in the minds of all living beings, accepting the worship of all living beings. Congratulations, fellow Taoist Ziwei. In the Purple Cloud Palace, after the phenomenon ended, everyone congratulated Feng Zichen one after another. Listening to the Star Master's message, his power was simply shocking. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was a little celestial emperor. Of course, they had to befriend such a person. However, the way Hao Yan looked at Feng Zichen seemed a little strange. Thinking about it, the power of great Emperor Ziwei should have belonged to the celestial emperor. Seeing the person who had taken away his power talking and laughing in front of him, how could he be happy? In this regard, Feng Zichen did not care. The four imperials and the celestial emperor had an irreconcilable conflict. There are still 2 imperial thrones left. The Western Heavenly Emperor of Supreme Polarity and the Southern Pole Longevity Emperor. Do you have anyone in mind? At this time, Dao ancestor Hongjun spoke. He wanted to take advantage of this gathering to decide on all the imperial thrones at once. Chapter 533. The Heavenly Dao had only appointed 2 great emperors, so the remaining 2 would naturally be decided by the Dao ancestor. Master, I have a disciple under my name, the Celestial Elder of the South Pole. He was born as the South Pole Star God and is fated to be the South Pole Longevity Emperor. As soon as Dao ancestor Hongjun finished speaking, the Heavenly Lord of the Primordial Beginning walked forward and said excitedly, "What a great fortune!" Hearing the name South Pole Longevity Emperor, he knew that this throne was prepared for his disciple, the Celestial Elder of the South Pole. This throne belonged to the South Pole Star God. That does make sense. Dao ancestor Hongjun nodded and was about to agree. The South Pole Longevity Emperor was originally prepared for the South Pole Star God. The Celestial Elder of the South Pole was the innate star god born from the South Pole, so this throne naturally belonged to him. What a joke! The Celestial Elder of the South Pole is only a Tai Jingxian. What right does he have to become the supreme being of heaven and earth and be worshipped by all living beings? Isn't he afraid of the backlash of his luck and dying? However, before Dao ancestor Hongjun could agree, Feng Zichen hurriedly stood up and objected. The boundless starry sky was his private land. How could he allow outsiders to interfere? Not to mention the claws of a saint. What's more, what he said was very reasonable. He wasn't even Daluo Jingxian, but he wanted to be above everyone. Was that possible? Even if Feng Zichen agreed, how could the other great divine masters agree? Did they still want face? That's right. Brother Yuqing, although the identity of the Celestial Elder of the South Pole is enough, his cultivation is still a little weak. It's better to wait a few years. When his cultivation is higher, it won't be too late to make a fuss. Sure enough, after Feng Zichen finished speaking, everyone spoke up to persuade him. Even if they knew that Feng Zichen was using them, they still did so. They weren't fools. How could they not see the intentions of the Heavenly Dao? They had just crowned Great Emperor Ziwei and now the South Pole Great Emperor. The meaning was very clear. They wanted to reduce the power of Great Emperor Ziwei. How could a boundless starry sky contain two great emperors? A fight was inevitable. Although the great mediums present didn't understand what the heavenly Tao was trying to do, it didn't stop them from watching the show. Anyway, this matter had nothing to do with them. However, the primeval Lord of Heaven wanted the Old Man of South Pole to become the Old Man of South Pole Longevity Emperor. Was the primeval Lord of Heaven out of his mind? How could he let a Tai Jingxian become the supreme of heaven and earth? What was he doing? This was a slap to the face of all the Daluo Jingxian in the untainted land. If he succeeded, no one would have the face to come out and see others in the future. He did not see that even the Grand Pure One and the Grand Master of Heaven did not stand up for the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning. It could be seen how unpopular he was. Alas! It's Antarctica's own fault. We can't blame the poor Wei. Thinking of this, the primeval Lord of Heaven sighed and said helplessly, "Fellow Taoists, let's stop arguing. Let's settle this matter here." Under the agitation of the crowd, even the primeval Lord of Heaven had to give in. At the same time, everyone's attitude made him understand that even if he stubbornly pushed the Old Man of South Pole to the position of the Old Man of South Pole, with his strength, it would be difficult for him to live until he took up the position. The angry crowd would definitely let him die quietly. Next, the Purple Cloud Palace became lively. In order to prevent the saints from causing any more trouble, everyone began to recommend themselves to compete for the position of the Old Man of South Pole. The Celestial Emperor was not their game. However, why couldn't they be the four great emperors? Which one of them had not contributed to the untainted land? Had not contributed to the untainted land? It was also at this time that the primeval Lord of Heaven acted out of character. No matter who recommended themselves, he had to find a reason to object. The primeval Lord of Heaven's idea was very simple. The Old Man of South Pole could not become the Old Man of South Pole not because he was not qualified, but because his cultivation was not enough. Then he would drag it out until the Old Man of South Pole attained the Tao. At that time, no one would object if he recommended the Old Man of South Pole. Fight. Later, I'll take drastic measures to deal with you all. Looking at the quarreling crowd, Feng Zichen's face gradually showed a hint of mockery. Then, his mind gradually sank and came to the Thunder Lake to take over the North Star incarnation. Sigh. North Star. I'm afraid I can't use this name in the future. After taking over the North Star incarnation, Feng Zichen felt a little melancholy. Originally, he planned to let this incarnation become the North Star Emperor. Therefore, he named it North Star. Unfortunately, plans could not keep up with changes. The identity of this incarnation would probably change in the future. From today onwards, I will trace back to the origin and change my name to Thunder Lake. Feng Zichen said to the sky as he walked out of the Thunder Lake. Then, he dispersed the North Star power in his body, leaving only the purest origin of the Connate lightning. Boom! Feng Zichen's aura dropped by 30% in an instant. Although his realm did not change, his combat strength was far less powerful than before. Dispersing one's origin was not without a price. However, he had a reason to do so. It was because he suddenly remembered something. That was, the matter of him establishing the incense divine path was not a secret in the primordial world. If someone wanted to investigate, they could easily find out. Therefore, the North Star incarnation could not become the North Star Emperor. Otherwise, the relationship between the two of them would be exposed. At that time, the entire primordial world would know that the great Taoist priests were not dead. Instead, he was walking in the primordial world as the North Star Emperor. This was not good for his future plans. As such, he had no choice but to become the North Star Emperor. Fortunately, this incarnation came from the Thunder Lake and was the Connate Lightning Lord. This gave Feng Zichen room to operate. It did not matter if the North Star Emperor could not become the Lord of Gods. He could immediately change his appearance and compete for the South Pole Longevity Emperor. That's right. Feng Zichen planned to let this incarnation born in the Thunder Lake become the South Pole Longevity Emperor. He could not compete with everyone in the Purple Cloud Palace. However, he could create a situation in the primordial world where the heavenly Tao had no choice but to choose him. South Pole Star come. Waving his hand at the South Pole Star, Feng Zichen summoned the origin of the South Pole Star God that was giving birth to a new South Pole Star God. A ball of bright starlight appeared from the void and was swallowed by Feng Zichen. Boom! On Feng Zichen's body, The aura that had fallen due to the dispersal of the North Star's origin recovered in an instant. It broke through the previous limit and became stronger. A wisp of extremely pure aura of the South Pole Star God appeared on Feng Zichen's body and became stronger and stronger. Hehe. The South Pole Star God. Now I am one too. After completely mastering the unfamiliar power in his body, Feng Zichen discovered that he had formed an extremely strange connection with the South Pole Star in the sky. It seemed that he could mobilize its power. This was the authority of the South Pole Star God. After becoming the South Pole Star God, Feng Zichen did not delay and went directly to the South Pole Star. The heavenly Tao above. The poor way of the Thunder Lake has sensed that the cultivators of the world do not seek the Tao. Instead, they stir up disputes for some personal benefits and ignore the primordial world. Today, I specially set up the heavenly tribulation to test the living beings of the primordial world and let them know that it is not easy to become an immortal and to attain the Tao. From now on, any living being that has sensed the heavenly Tao and taken form, transforming into a connate Tao body, will have the heavenly tribulation of transformation. If you pass it, you will transform into a human form. If you fail to pass it, your 100 years of cultivation will turn into flowing water, and you will die and enter the cycle of reincarnation. From now on, any living being that has returned to the void, merged with the Tao, and ascended to immortality will have the immortal ascension heavenly tribulation. If you pass it, you will become a celestial immortal karma rank and enjoy a lifespan of 1 yuan. If you fail to pass it, your body will turn into ashes and your soul will enter the cycle of reincarnation. From now on, any immortal that has merged with the Tao and achieved Tai will have the Tao unification tribulation. If you pass it, you will become a Tao Lord Karma rank and live forever. You will live as long as the heavens and the earth, and shine as bright as the sun and the moon. You will be free and unfettered. If you fail to pass it, your body will die and your Tao will be destroyed. Your cultivation will turn into flowing water, your origin will return to the heavens and the earth, and your remnant spirit will enter the cycle of reincarnation. I use the supreme grade connate spirit treasure, the Eye of Heavenly Tribulation, to set up the tribulation on behalf of the heavens and hope that the heavens will judge it. As Feng Zichen's voice fell, it could be said that thunder rose from the ground. The entire primordial world darkened and deafening thunder sounded. The voices were like claps of thunder, exploding in the ears of all living beings, leaving an unforgettable impression on them. Of course, this was not Feng Zichen's doing. Perhaps his original body could do this, but with Lei Zhe's ability as Daluo Jingxian, it was impossible for him to do this. Therefore, this was the heavenly Tao's doing. Feng Zichen's action of setting up the heavenly tribulation was extremely in line with the general trend of the heavens and the earth. It could be said that the appearance of the heavenly tribulation was the inevitable result of the self-perfection of the world. As the number of cultivators increased, the heavenly Tao would definitely think of ways to reduce the number of cultivators, and the heavenly tribulation was the best and most reasonable way. Therefore, even if Feng Zichen did not exist, the heavenly tribulation would naturally appear. However, Feng Zichen made the heavenly tribulation appear in advance, and it was more complete. This became Feng Zichen's merit. He believed that with the merit of setting up the heavenly tribulation, the position of the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor would belong to him. That's right. This was the method that Feng Zichen thought of. With the supreme merit, he forcefully broke the situation. What was the use of fighting in the Purple Cloud Palace? He directly used his actions to speak. Opportunity was won through fighting. Was not won through discussion. Rumble. The world shook as an extremely profound and mighty yet extremely cold aura appeared in the center of the sky. The heavenly Tao had appeared. What? In the Purple Cloud Palace, the great mediums who were arguing all became mutes. They stared blankly at everything that happened in the primordial world. With their cultivation bases, it was not difficult for them to guess what had happened. So, had they been intercepted? Everyone found it hard to accept. If they had known earlier, why would they have fought? Wouldn't they have been a joke the entire time? Everyone was fine. They did not care about the position of the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor. If he lost it, so be it. They did not lose anything. But the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning. He could not accept it. After all, he really cared. Therefore, his face was livid the entire time as he coldly watched Lei Zhe's actions below. Today he had lost a lot of face. The previous argument had all become a joke. Therefore, he naturally hated the culprit, Lei Zhe, to the core. If it were not for the heavenly Tao, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning would have smashed down the 3 precious jade rui. After the heavenly Tao appeared, the dark clouds that filled the sky slowly dispersed. However, although the dark clouds dispersed, the lightning did not disappear. Instead, it seemed to be getting more and more intense. The lightning hung in the sky. From afar, it looked like a sea of lightning that could fall at any time and destroy everything. Aloud, an extremely cold and emotionless voice suddenly reverberated between heaven and earth. It was the voice of the heavenly Tao. He agreed to Feng Zichen's heavenly tribulation. When the heavenly Tao moved, the myriad Tao moved as well. Rumble. Endless lightning gathered in the sky under the power of the heavenly Tao. It merged with the myriad Tao and gradually evolved into a special power. The power of the heavenly tribulation. A power that had never appeared in the primordial world. Looking at the sea of lightning tribulation in front of him, Feng Zichen instinctively walked into it. Boom! The sea of lightning tribulation boiled. As if it was about to explode, it emitted dazzling lightning. Waves of the power of the lightning tribulation flowed through Feng Zichen's pores and poured into his body, washing his meridians and gradually changing his body structure, causing his physique to gradually transform into the sacred body of heavenly tribulation. Blood, bones, meridians, acupuncture points, bone marrow, internal organs. Everything that was the embodiment of the Thunderlock was being transformed by the power of the lightning tribulation. It was constantly being destroyed and reborn. Fortunately, when one's strength reached Feng Zichen's level, other than love, it was difficult for pain to shake his heart. Otherwise, just the intense pain caused by the transformation of his body would be enough to make Feng Zichen suffer so much that he would rather die. Bas! Bas! The eye of the heavenly tribulation was jumping happily. Compared to Feng Zichen, it was obvious that it liked this place more. With every beat, an endless amount of lightning tribulation power was absorbed and refined by him. His origin was gradually strengthening. Mysterious Tao patterns appeared on his body, causing the aura he emitted to become stronger and stronger. Even its external color had become deeper and deeper. It was so purple that it was somewhat dazzling. Its appearance was getting closer and closer to the eye of heavenly tribulation. It was believed that after this time, the eye of heavenly tribulation would usher in an unimaginable transformation. Even if it was not as good as a primordial treasure, it would not be far away. Perhaps, it was no longer suitable to be called a primordial spirit treasure since it could control the power of heavenly tribulation. It was more appropriate to call it a heavenly Tao artifact. Rumble. The Tao of heaven and earth was changing, and the laws were changing. A new law of heaven and earth was born, enveloping the entire world. That was the law of heavenly tribulation. The moment it was born, all the cultivators who had not become Tai Jingxian in the primordial world felt a chill run down their spines. It was as if they were being targeted by a mysterious existence. It was the heavenly tribulation. They were being targeted by the heavenly tribulation. Inexplicably, a message appeared in the hearts of all living beings. That message was recorded. Was the tribulation that they were about to transcend. As soon as the heavenly tribulation was established, the heavenly Tao could not wait to test its power. Chapter 534. At the same time, chaotic and disorderly information crazily surged into Feng Zichen's sea of consciousness, causing him to feel dizzy. After a long time, Feng Zichen finally regained his senses. After sorting out the information for a moment, he realized that the information that surged in was the list of cultivators who were transcending the tribulation this time. With the size of the primordial world, there were more than hundreds of millions of living beings who were about to transcend the tribulation. With so much information surging in, it was no wonder that Feng Zichen felt dizzy. After sizing it up for a while, Feng Zichen blocked the information. There were so many living beings who were about to transcend the tribulation. If he ran over one by one, wouldn't he be exhausted to death? Even if he wasn't tired to death, he probably wouldn't have time to deal with other things. Therefore, unless an extremely special person or object appeared, Feng Zichen wouldn't personally descend the tribulation. As for the tribulations of these people, it was better to leave it to the heavenly Tao. On the contrary, he was quite happy. Heavenly tribulation? That's a good method. Now that the cultivators in the world are not equal, Fellow Taoist Lei Zhe has set up the heavenly tribulation at this time. It's really a mighty figure who follows the heavens. In the future, those who are unlucky and have shallow virtue will not be able to achieve anything if they don't get rid of their bad roots. That's right. Cultivation is against the heavens. If you can't even transcend a mere heavenly tribulation, how can you cultivate as an immortal and seek the Tao? It's better to face the tribulation as soon as possible and reduce the burden of heaven and earth. In the Purple Cloud Palace, everyone praised Lei Zhe for setting up the heavenly tribulation. Even Tao ancestor Hong Jun couldn't help but smile. Obviously, he was very satisfied with this. After the heavenly tribulation, cultivators would have scruples in their hearts when they acted in the future. They wouldn't dare to be as lawless as before. It would definitely reduce the number of disputes in the primordial world. As for whether the heavenly tribulation would affect their disciples, that wouldn't. To be able to become the successor of a great divine power, they must have extraordinary abilities. A mere heavenly tribulation naturally couldn't do anything to them. On the other hand, if a disciple of a great divine power really died under the heavenly tribulation, then this great divine power probably wouldn't admit that he had this disciple to avoid becoming the laughingstock of the primordial world. Sea of Heavenly Tribulation. After going through a lot of pain, Feng Zichen's sacred body of heavenly tribulation was finally transformed. Power, an incomparably powerful power surged within his body. Although his realm had not changed, he was still in Daluo Jinqian's perfect realm. However, his power had reached the pinnacle of sage to be under the support of the power of the heavenly tribulation. This was the benefit of the power of heaven and earth. As long as one grasped the power of the heavenly gods, even a mortal would be able to unleash unparalleled power. Moreover, if one cultivated in this realm, one's cultivation would advance by leaps and bounds. It was as if one was using cheats. After familiarizing himself with his new power, Feng Zichen put away the remaining power of the Sea of Tribulation and returned to the Thunder Lake. Then, he carried Lei Zhe and flew to the South Pole Star region. Heavenly Tao above. Today, the Thunderlock will transform the Thunderlock into the 9 heavens in the South Star Field. We will establish the Tao of Thunder in the 9 heavens and establish the Tao of Thunder in the 9 heavens. Standing above the South Pole Star Field, Feng Zichen swore. Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, Lei Zhe shattered into 9 huge fragments. At the same time, endless lightning appeared between heaven and earth and gathered here. There was also an inexplicable Taoist rhyme that appeared and merged with the shattered Lei Zhe. That was the Tao of Connate Lightning. He appeared in person, helping Lei Zhe transform into the divine 9 heavens. Buzz, 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 the South Pole Star. And within the South Pole Star region, all the stars ruled by the South Pole Star. At the same time, they all shone brightly and released endless starlight that gathered toward the 9 fragments of Lei Zhe. Rumble! The void trembled and lightning grew. 9 vast heavenly palaces appeared layer by layer in the lightning and stood in the sky above the South Pole Star region. Lei Zhe was becoming history. And just as Lei Zhe was about to completely transform into the divine 9 heavens, 9 majestic divine abodes appeared one by one in the depths of Lei Zhe. 9 Heaven Thunder Palace. The connate spiritual treasure that Lei Zhe nurtured. Each divine abode was a superior grade connate spiritual treasure. When the 9 divine abodes were combined, they were the top connate spiritual treasure of the primitive world. Rumble! 9 Heaven Thunder Palace flew out, each presiding over a heaven, announcing the establishment of the divine 9 heavens. Crack! In the primitive world, thousands of thunder roared together. Accompanied by countless connate divine thunder, the Tao of Connate Lightning appeared and verified with the divine 9 heavens to celebrate its birth. There were divine runes from the heavenly Tao that turned into endless rays of light and evolved into 9 connate Tao patterns that named the divine 9 heavens. They were divine 9 heavens, green heavens, jade heavens, red heavens, bright heavens, jade heavens, clear heavens, purple heavens, and supreme heavens. Among them, the divine 9 heavens was the most respected. Lei Zhe lived in the divine 9 heavens Thunder Palace in divine 9 heavens and commanded the lightning of the heavens. Although the Thunder Tao of 9 heavens was completed, Feng Zichen did not stop there. Instead, he mobilized all his Dharma power and used the Supreme Void Shift. First, he captured 36 fragments of the heavenly realm from the 33 heavens. Then, he took 36 fragments of the earth from the primitive world. Refine! Looking at the 72 fragments of heaven and earth in front of him, Feng Zichen raised his hand and struck out billions of thunderbolts that turned into connate thunderfire and blasted towards them. Rumble! The thunderfire boiled and surged with endless power, wreaking havoc around everything and shattering the 72 fragments of heaven and earth. The fragments of the heavenly realm shattered and turned into connate chi. The fragments of the earth shattered and turned into connate chi. The meeting of connate chi gave birth to creation. Earth, fire, water, and wind were born. Yin and yang boiled, and chaotic chi surged. The mystery of the boundless world was undoubtedly displayed here. Huff! When the fragments of heaven and earth were completely shattered, Feng Zichen seized the opportunity and used the thunderbolts as an axe to hack at the connate chi, trying to create a grotto heaven. Swish! Lightning flashed and circulated the power of yin and yang. The connate chi separated again and created many magical small worlds that fell into the divine nine heavens and merged with the origin of connate thunder. This was not a small world, but a grotto heaven, also known as a thunder prison, or heavenly prison. The 36 small grotto heavens were the 36 thunder prisons. The 36 heavenly prisons were specially created by Feng Zichen. Henceforth, as long as someone was born to cause chaos in the world, after killing them, their indestructible true spirit would be suppressed here. This was to prevent them from continuing to create chaos in the primordial world after their resurrection. The divine nine heavens were born. The 36 thunder prisons were opened. At this point, Feng Zichen's trip could be considered to have been completed. Next, it was time for merit to descend. With the 3 matters of merit added together, Feng Zichen naturally received a lot of merit. A golden light flashed between heaven and earth, and merit fell like rain. However, Feng Zichen did not accept the merit. Instead, he divided it into 9 portions and sent them into the depths of the divine 9 heavens. There were 9 extremely illusory true spirit marks. They were the 9 thunder lords of the 9 heavens who had their vitality devoured by the black lotus of destruction and died prematurely. At that time, in order to condense the Thunderlock incarnation, Feng Zichen had promised them to avenge him. However, even though he had managed to severely injure the world devastator Taoist time and time again, he was still unable to kill him. Even though his current strength was almost at the peak of the primordial world, it was still the same. Because he could not find any trace of the world devastator Taoist. The demon sect had hidden themselves too deeply. That was true. If they had not hidden deeply, they would have been found by the experts of the celestial sect and completely exterminated. There was no other way. If the oath could not be completed, it would hinder one's Tao heart and affect the advancement of one's cultivation. Therefore, Feng Zichen thought about it and thought of a compromise. That was to help the Thunder Lord of the 9 heavens revive and use this to end the karma. No matter how great the karma was, it could not make up for the debt of saving one's life. As long as the Thunder Lord of the 9 heavens was revived, there was no need for Feng Zichen to take revenge. Wouldn't it be better and more satisfying for them to take revenge themselves? Moreover, the 9 Thunder Lords of the 9 heavens represented 9 top-notch connate godfiends. These were all future golden immortals, and they were also Lei Zhe's subordinates. The Thunder Lord of the 9 heavens was born in the divine firmament and formed an inseparable connection with Feng Zichen. He automatically belonged to his faction. The 9 Daluo Jingxian could be considered a powerful force in any era. In the Purple Cloud Palace, the will of heaven appeared again, and a talisman gradually took shape. Tao ancestor Hong Jun casually opened it. On it was written the conferment of Lei Zhe. The god of Lei Zhe is the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor, Heavenly Lord unifying the heavens. Among the 10 extremities, he dominates all things. He is the ancestor of thunder, the origin of the thunder god. He is infinite and boundless, respected by heaven and earth. Fellow Taoist Lei Zhe has established the heavenly tribulation and has contributed greatly to heaven and earth. He is the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor. We are sincerely convinced. No one had any objections to the heavenly Tao's conferment of Lei Zhe as the Longevity Emperor. After all, the merit was too great. The heavenly Tao talisman shattered, and specks of Tao light spread out. They passed through the layers of space and turned into an emperor's robe that draped over Lei Zhe's body. Boom! Between heaven and earth, an extremely noble aura spread out, and all kinds of phenomena appeared. Praise the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor. Praise the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor. Heavenly Lord unifying the heavens. High above the Shenshao Mansion, Radiant Illumination Palace. Huiyuan ancestral qi separates the true from the true, and develops according to the Tao of nothingness. Above the 9 heavens, he rules the heavens. Among the 10 extremities, he dominates all things. Using the golden talisman to help the poor, using the huais to help the people. Benevolence to the origin, benevolence to the calamity, great sorrow and great wish, great saint and great benevolence. The southern extremity longevity emperor. Heavenly Lord unifying the heavens. The sound of the talisman echoed between heaven and earth, praising the greatness of the southern extremity longevity emperor. At the same time, a vast palace appeared on the South Pole star. It was the residence of the southern extremity longevity emperor. It was formed by the Tao of heaven and earth. It was extremely mysterious, just like the heavenly court. Although it wasn't an innate spiritual treasure, it was even more mysterious than an innate spiritual treasure. All 4 heavenly emperors had it. It was prepared for them by heaven and earth. Following the confirmation of the southern extremity longevity emperor, the atmosphere in the Purple Cloud Palace became even more solemn. That was because at this moment, everyone realized that none of the 3 newly appointed heavenly emperors were from the Xian sect. This truly shocked everyone. What was going on with the Xian sect? Was it going to decline? One should know that ever since the Taoist ancestor preached in the Purple Cloud Palace, the authority of the Eldritch world had always been in the hands of the Xian sect. However, the current situation was that none of the 3 heavenly emperors were from the Xian sect. Was this a sign of something? The prosperous Xian sect couldn't escape from the law of heaven and earth. Was it going to decline after reaching the peak of prosperity? For a moment, everyone was worried about the future of the Xian sect. Almost at the same time, everyone made a decision. No matter what, the position of the heavenly emperor of the North Star must not fall into the hands of an outsider. 3 of the 4 heavenly emperors had already been lost. If the last one was lost, it would definitely be a huge blow to the prestige of the Xian sect. Do you have anyone in mind for the position of the North Star? Taoist ancestor Hongjun was still calm, and no one could tell what he was thinking. Whoosh! For a moment, everyone looked at the 3 pure ones. This time, as long as the person recommended by the 3 pure ones was a little more reliable, they would grit their teeth and accept it. However, at this moment, the 3 pure ones were also at a loss. They were there. There was really no suitable candidate. Just the fact that their cultivation was higher than Daluo Jinqian's had blocked all the choices of the 3 pure ones. Yi Ang's cultivation had reached the level. However, as the only disciple of the Grand Pure One, he was the continuation of his orthodoxy. It was impossible for him to be the heavenly emperor. At this moment, Nuwa suddenly smiled and stepped forward. Master, I have a candidate here. Whether it's identity, strength or merit, he's the best candidate. Not to mention the position of the Emperor of the North Star, even the Heavenly Emperor is qualified. When she said these words, Nuwa glanced at Feng Zichen from the corner of her eyes, as if she was signaling to him. Feng Zichen was stunned and guessed what Nuwa meant. If he guessed correctly, the person recommended by Nuwa was... Who? Without waiting for Taoist ancestor Hongjun to speak, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning asked in confusion. Even the rest of the people looked over with puzzled gazes. It was no wonder that everyone was like that. Nuwa had gone too far. In their long memory, there were not many people in the primordial world who could deserve such praise from Nuwa. Could it be Fuxi? A thought appeared in everyone's minds. Thinking about it, it was very possible. Firstly, Fuxi and Nuwa were brother and sister, and their relationship was enough. Secondly, Fuxi was indeed a talent that transcended the heavens and the earth. He was qualified to become the Emperor of the North Star. Thirdly, Fuxi had already fallen in the witch-demon tribulation. If he wanted to revive, he would need a long time to recover. However, if he ascended to the position of the North Star, with the support of the heavens and the earth, he would probably be able to revive and return very quickly. It was completely possible that Nuwa recommended him. Thinking of this, everyone made a decision in their hearts. If that was the case, then don't blame them for not giving Nuwa face. Because of the witch demon, everyone had suffered a great loss and almost became sinners who destroyed the world. With this karma, how could they not hate the demon clan? As the demon emperor, Fuxi was naturally among their enemies. How could they let him return so easily? Sigh. It seems that brother won't be able to return for the time being. How could everyone's thoughts be hidden from Nuwa? She only needed to think for a moment and guessed most of it. Fortunately, the candidate she recommended this time was not Fushi, but someone else. Chapter 535. Zichen Clan. Great Taoist Priests. Panga Zichen Clan. Nuwa calmly said a name that everyone was very familiar with. How could they not be familiar with it? Before the battle between the liches and demons broke out, this person's name often resounded in the primordial world. The primordial world was because of him. Too many changes had happened. Panga Zichen Clan. It was the youngest Daluo Jinxian in the primordial world. It was also the strongest Daluo Jinxian in the primordial world. At the same time, he was also recognized by all living beings in the world as the #1 genius in the primordial world. He was simply too stunning. He was so powerful that everyone in the same era as him completely lost their color. If the geniuses were like stars, then he was the boundless starry sky. The existence of all the geniuses was just to embellish him and set off his greatness. Not to mention anything else, the Zichen clan was only a postnatal living being, but they could obtain the approval of the Pangu. They changed their fate and became the most noble Pangu in the primordial world. Just this point alone was unparalleled in the primordial world. Even Dao ancestor Hong Jun could not do it. If he had not died accidentally, everyone had no doubt that there would be another primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian in the primordial world soon. It's the great Taoist priests. With the identity of the great Taoist priests, the position of the Emperor of the North Star country is indeed enough. Not to mention anything else, just based on the identity of the Pangu, a supreme karmic position must be given to him. After knowing that the candidate recommended by Nuwa was Feng Zichen and not Fushi, everyone heaved a sigh of relief and nodded. After all, Feng Zichen's identity was there, and no one had any reason to refuse. Not to mention his noble background, he was also a member of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. Was there a more suitable candidate than him? What? Feng Zichen was not a member of the Celestial Sect of Wonders? Wasn't this a joke? As everyone knew, Feng Zichen was Nuwa's disciple. Who was Nuwa? The 6 sages of the Celestial Sect of Wonders, the direct disciples of the Dao ancestor. His disciples, naturally, he was a disciple of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. Everyone agreed, but Xuanti was anxious. It was also well known that they had a grudge against Feng Zichen, a grudge that could not be resolved. Fortunately, now that the heavenly Dao was flourishing, the heavenly secrets of the human race were not obvious. Even the saints could not calculate that the heavenly Dao wanted the human race to become the protagonist of the world. Otherwise, Xuanti would not be anxious. One had to know that before Feng Zichen died, he had given a death order that all humans who joined the Western sect would be treated as traitors. With fellow Taoist Zichen's status, he is indeed qualified to be the emperor of the Gochen Heavenly Emperor. But unfortunately, he has fallen. We can't possibly let a dead person become the supreme ruler of the world, right? Although Taoist Xuanti was helpless, he still stepped forward and said. To him, since there was already an irreconcilable conflict between the two of them, there was no need to hold back. He had to think of all ways to suppress the other party. Therefore, Taoist Xuanti and Taoist Xuanti had to object to everything that could benefit Feng Zichen. Fellow Taoist Xuanti, you must be joking. When one's strength reaches our level, how can there be death? Moreover, is the great Taoist priests really dead? As the primordial sword ancestor, Daluo Jinxian, the invincible great Taoist priests died just like that. Fellow Taoist, don't you think it's a little fake? Even if he wants to die, the heavenly Dao won't let him die. In short, the poor Wei doesn't believe that the Zichen clan will fall. Perhaps he deliberately used Tai's hand to fake his death and escape to get rid of the karma on him. Without waiting for Nuwa to refute, the great divine abilities present refuted one after another. The great Taoist priests. To a certain extent, it was even more powerful than a saint birth. Therefore, none of the great divine abilities of the primordial world believed that Feng Zichen had died. That day, the great Taoist priests died. Heaven and earth mourned and rained blood. Everyone saw it, right? This can't be fake, right? Taoist Xuanti had no choice but to insist. Uproar. As soon as he said that, the entire hall was in an uproar. Fellow Taoist Xuanti, why are you pretending to be confused? Who doesn't know how to deceive the heavens and cross the sea? Thinking about it, with the great Taoist priest's ability, if he wants to fake his death, there are many ways to deceive the heavenly Tao. Moreover, even if he really dies, when he becomes the great Emperor Gaochen Tianhuang, the power of heaven and earth can pull him out of his deep sleep. The heavenly lord of primordial beginning sneered and said. At that moment, the three pure ones and Zhuan had almost fallen out with each other. They were about to knock each other out. How could their relationship be good? Now that Taoist Zhuan had left behind something to talk about, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning seized the opportunity to mock him. You. Taoist Zhuan-Ti's face alternated between green and white when he heard the heavenly lord of primordial beginning's words. He could not find any words to refute. He could only snort coldly and leave with a flick of his sleeve. The Panga Zichen clan is indeed the most suitable candidate. Everyone agreed, and Tao ancestor Hong Jun did not object. The matter was settled. Hence, the will of heaven appeared and the decree reappeared. The Panga Zichen clan is conferred as the Great Emperor of the Upper Palace of the North Star, the Great Emperor of the Western Sect of Supreme Polarity. Master the spirits, wield the myriad gods diagram, and always control the myriad gods. Boundless and boundless, respected by heaven and earth. Bang! The decree shattered and turned into starlight that filled the sky. However, this time, it was different from the previous 3 times. No matter how the power of the decree searched, it could not find Feng Zichen's aura in the primordial world. Whoosh! After a short silence, layers of ripples suddenly appeared in the void. An extremely vast power suddenly descended. Rumble! A powerful pressure spread and covered the entire primordial world in the blink of an eye. This was the heavenly Tao searching for Feng Zichen's traces. Where is he? At this moment, not to mention the great mystical abilities, even the saints could not help but be excited. They stared intently at the heavenly Tao decree and waited for the final result. Where was Feng Zichen? The small primordial world. Something unexpected happened. The power of the heavenly Tao surged and spread to every corner of the small primordial world, wanting to condense Feng Zichen's indestructible true spirit again. Buzz buzz buzz. Under the power of the heavenly Tao, specks of spiritual light rose from various parts of the small primordial world and gradually gathered into a blurry human figure. It was Feng Zichen's fake true spirit. Back then, in order to deceive the heavenly Tao, Feng Zichen used incense crystals and various supreme treasures to refine a true spirit that could pass off as the real one. This fake true spirit, after many years of polishing by Feng Zichen, had already defied the connate heavens and become a connate indestructible spiritual light. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a real true spirit. As Feng Zichen created the world, this fake true spirit was also shattered. He had thought that after this fake true spirit was shattered, its mission would also come to an end. However, he did not expect that when the emperor's throne descended, the power of the heavenly Tao would descend and condense it again. Since the heavenly Tao was so kind, Feng Zichen was not prepared to be polite. He planned to continue using this incarnation and do things in the primordial world. The treatment of the supreme of heaven and earth was extraordinary. In order to condense Feng Zichen's Tao body again, the natural source of heaven and earth actually overflowed from the void. It was really shocking. Unfortunately, with the isolation of the sun god seal, no one could see this scene. No, I can't revive like this. Suddenly, Feng Zichen frowned and felt that this was not a good time for him to revive. In this world, the most terrifying enemy came from the unknown. As long as he was still in death, anyone who had a grudge against him would always be afraid of him and be wary of him. They would guess what he was hiding in the dark and what he was planning. However, if he revived, everyone's vigilance against him would be greatly reduced. This way, his resurrection would be meaningless. Therefore, Feng Zichen thought about it and felt that he should not revive so hastily. He had to leave a suspense for all living beings in the world so that they could not figure out his true situation. Disperse. With a thought, Feng Zichen directly sacrificed the Tao body that had just formed to obtain a powerful strength. He forcefully broke through the seal of the sun god seal and arrived at the outside world. In the next moment, Feng Zichen's true spirit flashed and arrived at the Gaochen planet. Rumble! As soon as Feng Zichen appeared, the heavenly Tao talisman tore through the air and turned into an emperor's robe that draped over his body. At the same time, an extremely majestic emperor's shadow, appeared in the hearts of all living beings in the world, accepting their worship. Praise the Gaochen Shangguan Heavenly Emperor. Praise the Western Supreme Heavenly Emperor. Ziwei Qinji, Gaochen Heavenly Palace. In the Nine Lights Treasure Garden, above the 5 Qi Xuandu, the body of the primordial emperor and the Zuosi Xianxia, there are always 2 extremes and 3 talents. He presided over the balance of the military revolution and widely promoted great virtue. He controlled the entanglement of the stars and did not make any mistakes. The upper elephant was majestic, and his vital essence was vast. Great sorrow and great wish, great sage and great mercy. Gaochen Upper Palace, Heavenly Emperor. The Gaochen returned to its position, and the precious message resounded between heaven and earth. However, the changes between heaven and earth were far from over. After the 4 emperors returned, the order of the primordial world, it became more and more stable. This also meant that the primordial world had been further perfected. The indistinct purple gold palace, the majestic green jade palace. He controlled the 7 political powers of Ziwei and was the master of a dynasty. The 3 flowers Wuxia, the 5 latitudes neon Jing. He was the pivot of creation and the great handle of the human gods. In the Daluo sky, in the golden palace, the 4 emperors, Heavenly Lord Jinrong Yuxiang. Suddenly, the cold voice of the heavenly Tao resounded in the primordial world. This was the heavenly Tao personally coming out to praise the greatness of the 4 emperors. At this point, the matter of the 4 emperors had come to an end. The great Taoist priests are indeed not dead. Sensing Feng Zichen's aura, everyone immediately looked at the Gaochen planet. However, they were disappointed. They did not see Feng Zichen. Where is he? Where is the Zichen clan? On the Gaochen planet, everyone only saw an emperor's robe. The emperor's robe of the Gaochen Great Emperor. The shocking emperor's might was emitted from it. As for Feng Zichen, no one saw him. On the Gaochen planet, there was no aura of him. It was as if the emperor's shadow that they saw earlier was a complete illusion. But no one would think so. It seems that the Zichen clan is really not dead, and they have escaped from the sun god forbidden ground. But why didn't he show up? Or is he planning something? For a moment, all kinds of doubts appeared in everyone's minds. In fact, Feng Zichen did not leave the Gaochen planet. He was hiding here to recover his strength. However, his existence was completely hidden by the god Pangu. Naturally, no one could see him. However, the more Feng Zichen tried to hide his tracks, the more everyone thought. Because smart people were like this. They thought too much. After the 4 emperors, Haotian Yaoqi succeeded. A momentum that was even greater than the 4 emperors descended on the primordial world. The entire primordial world was trembling. Excitement spread to every corner of the primordial world, celebrating the birth of the Celestial Emperor. The Celestial Emperor. His identity was there. Of course it had to be grand. Not to mention the 4 emperors, even the 6 saints could not compare to him when they attained the Tao. The laws of heaven and earth became more and more active. Even the Khanate Qi that was transforming into acquired Qi stopped transforming. The spiritual veins that should not be producing Khanate Qi began to breathe in and out Khanate Qi again. It was not that the world was no longer changing. It was to celebrate Haotian's ascension to the throne. The heavenly Tao had temporarily suspended this process. They still had to give face to the Celestial Emperor. Praise the Celestial Emperor. Praise the Celestial Emperor Haotian. The Supreme Merua Heaven. The mysterious realm. The indistinct purple gold palace. The supreme jade pure official. The Wuji supreme saint. Emitting light. The silent vast sect. The mysterious fan 10 directions. The silent true path. The vast great divine ability. The jade great heavenly Lord Emperor. The mysterious sky high emperor. On this day, Haotian ascended the throne. Heaven and earth produced an incomparable phenomenon. All living beings prostrated themselves in worship to celebrate the birth of the Celestial Emperor. This marked the era of the Lich was completely over. The Lich had become history. In the blink of an eye, a Yuan Hui passed. The Celestial Emperor's grace dissipated. The primordial world once again began to transform into the acquired world. On this day, on the shore of the East Sea, in the ancestral land of the human race, once again, it welcomed its master. Feng Zichen had returned. However, he did not alarm anyone. In fact, even if he was alarmed, it was not a big deal. After all, no one could recognize him. The people now were not so much humans, but ape men. Because, under the seal of the demon race, the humans who stayed in the primordial world had all lost their intelligence. It was Feng Zichen. There was no way to save them. It was because the seal left behind by the demon race was too strong. However, after the demon race declined for a Yuan Hui, things took a turn for the better. The bloodline seal that they left in the bodies of the humans had already declined to the extreme as time passed. Therefore, Feng Zichen came. He wanted to teach the humans the method to unlock the seal of the demon race. Yes, that's right. He did not directly unlock the seal for the humans, but taught them the method to unlock the seal. After learning the lesson from back then, Feng Zichen decided that he would not interfere in the affairs of the humans unless he had no other choice. Humans. In the end, they had to rely on themselves. They could not become great if they were always under the protection of others. They had to constantly strive for self-improvement and conquer the heavens. This was what the human race should do. Therefore, that was why Feng Zichen made this decision. Want to unlock the seal? Sure, work hard to become stronger. It was better to rely on oneself than on others. Next, the human race was going to compete with the 10,000 races of the primordial world for hegemony. They needed to defeat the 10,000 races and gather their luck to establish the foundation of becoming the protagonist of the world. Although the heavenly Tao had appointed the human race as the protagonist of the world, if the human race did not work hard, it was not impossible for him to change people. Therefore, the future of the human race would be very difficult. There were countless difficulties waiting for them to overcome. Without great perseverance, it would be difficult to persevere. Chapter 536. Relying on their own strength to break the seal was the test that Feng Zichen gave them. If they couldn't even solve this problem, then there was no need for the human race to compete with the myriad races. They would die if they went up. The Tao of the God Fiend is to refine essence into Qi, refine Qi into spirit, refine spirit into the void, return to the void, and refine into the Tao. Words of the great Tao came out of Feng Zichen's mouth. They were mysterious and wonderful, explaining the mysteries of the Tao of the God Fiend for the human race. The way to break the seal of the demon race was hidden in the Tao of the God Fiend. The demon race had set up 9 seals in the bloodline of the human race, each stronger than the last. As a result, the human race's bloodline had degenerated to the extreme and they had become beast-like existences. The foundation of the Tao of the God Fiend was to transform one's bloodline. It was the nemesis of the demon race's seal. When the demon race was powerful, Feng Zichen didn't dare to help the human race for fear of attracting trouble. But now that the demon race had declined, it was time for the human race to rise again. The Tao sounds were faint. Through the bloodline of the human race. It resounded in the hearts of all the humans. But now, the human race had no intelligence at all. No matter what Feng Zichen said, other than feeling that it sounded good, there was nothing else. They couldn't understand at all. But it didn't matter. Feng Zichen didn't intend to let the clansmen understand immediately. This was unrealistic. It didn't matter if the clansmen couldn't understand now. These Tao sounds would be hidden deep in their bloodline. As the clansmen continued to improve, they would continue to echo in their sea of consciousness, helping them to comprehend the mysteries of the Tao of the God Fiend. This was the innate inheritance that Feng Zichen had prepared for the human race. It was unique to the human race. Every innate race. They all had their own innate inheritance. As an innate race, the human race didn't have such an inheritance. But now the human race had it. Although Feng Zichen didn't intend to help the human race too much, if there was a chance, he couldn't let the human race lose too much at the starting line. If he could make up for it, he would try his best. The sound of the Tao reverberated in everyone's hearts, revealing all sorts of profound truths. However, the humans were completely unmoved. This was because they couldn't understand him at all. However, Feng Zichen didn't seem to notice it and continued to preach the way of the gods and demons. As time gradually passed, the blood of the humans began to boil under the influence of the Tao sound. That was. His ancient fiend god bloodline was awakening. Most of the humans who had survived until now were the descendants of the Tai Jingxian. The human Tai Jingxian had cultivated the Tao of fiend gods for many years. Their bloodline had undergone multiple transformations, and they were infinitely close to becoming innate fiend gods. Their descendants naturally benefited as well. Their bloodline carried a trace of the fiend god's might. Although the fiend god bloodline was weakening under the seal of the fiend gods, weakening did not mean that it had disappeared. Now, Feng Zichen explained the Tao of gods and devils. It resonated with the fiend god bloodline in their bodies and awakened it, allowing the human race to once again possess the talent to cultivate. His blood was burning, and his blood was boiling. Roar, roar, roar. Incomparably exuberant energy erupted in the bodies of the clansmen, driving them to roar and shout to vent the excess energy in their bodies. However, the energy from the bloodline was too exuberant. No matter how they vented, they could not exhaust it. Instead, it became more and more intense, as if it was about to explode. Bang, bang, bang. Driven by instinct, a portion of the clansmen inexplicably waved their hands and performed a set of fist techniques to digest the exuberant energy in their bodies. Speaking of which, they had never learned this set of fist techniques before, nor had they come into contact with it. However, for some unknown reason, they managed to learn it naturally, and were able to beat it out of them. This was a basic fist technique. During the age of witches and demons, every clansman had to learn a fist technique to temper their chi and blood and temper their foundation. The reason why those clansmen could perform this fist technique meant that the bloodline in their bodies was gradually awakening. The power from the ancient times was awakening. Humph. Ha. Humph. Ha. As the fist technique was performed, the rhythm of everyone's breathing naturally changed. Their internal organs trembled, their tendons and bones sounded at the same time. Wisps of essence energy were refined and fused with their limbs and bones, strengthening their bodies. Becoming stronger. They were becoming stronger. Ever since they were sealed by the demon clan, the human race had begun to become stronger. Finally, someone succeeded in body refinement and used his chi and blood to blast open the divine sea. He entered the divine sea realm and opened his spiritual wisdom again. With the first one. The second one was not far away. After that, like bamboo shoots after a rain, more and more humans cultivated to the divine sea realm and regained their spiritual wisdom. In this way, 100 years later, Feng Zichen stopped preaching. After passing down some simple divine abilities, he directly left the ancestral land and did not meet the new human race. Once they met, it would be difficult to part with them. Since that was the case, it was better not to see them. After Feng Zichen left, a little torch slowly appeared in the ancestral temple of the human race. That was the torch. The fire of civilization. The fire of inheritance. The torch was reignited. It marked a new beginning for the human race. Although the current Xianxia was like a small spark compared to the ancient times, the current Xianxia was like a small spark. But his body was filled with vigorous vitality. The human race had a lot of potential. The human race rose again. The other races of the primordial world were not calm either. Without the pressure of the two great mountains of liches and demons, the ambitions of some innate races began to grow, and they had the idea of dominating the primordial world. If the liches could do it, why couldn't they? Especially the current primordial world, which was in an unprecedented change. It was changing from the innate era to the postnatal era. Chaos. Chaos. Incomparable chaos. A chaotic world was coming. A chaotic world would produce heroes. This was destined to be an era where heroes would come out in large numbers. The law of the jungle was bound to be played out vividly and vividly. In the era of great competition, the strong would be strong and the weak would die. The world had changed greatly, and it was unknown how many geniuses would come out of the great era. In recent years, among the various innate races, the talent of the newborns could be said to be stronger and stronger. That's right. In this era where the innate chi was deteriorating and the postnatal chi was gradually spreading, not only were the descendants of the innate races not weakened, but they were becoming stronger and stronger. It was like adding oil to the fire. The innate races were unwilling to let the innate era pass just like that. They planned to fight hard and forcefully use their luck to produce a large number of geniuses, hoping to reverse the trend of the world. As a result, in the current era, the geniuses of the various races were fighting to rise. It was like a group of stars competing for brilliance. And the human race was their enemy. The only enemy. Friends, the times have changed. Previously, in the innate era, the human race as postnatal life forms was despised by the world. It was difficult for them to even do the simplest cultivation. But now, the era that belonged to the postnatal era had arrived. As postnatal life forms, the human race had become the favorite of the world. They were loved by the world and were the absolutely righteous party. And those postnatal races who wanted to reverse the trend and restore the glory of the postnatal era had become traitors in the eyes of the world. They were the most evil forces. Justice and evil were destined to be irreconcilable. Even if the human race didn't want to be enemies with the myriad races, they had no choice but to face them. It was all for survival. The myriad races were busy, and the demons weren't idle either. That was because they were facing a big problem. They had no successors. They had been cursed. To be precise, they were cursed by the stars. As a result, the newborn demons were getting weaker and weaker. Not to mention the innate bloodline, even their intelligence was almost unable to be preserved. After returning from the human race, Feng Zichen looked at Zhou and couldn't help but think of everything the demons had done to the human race. Hee. Karma reincarnation. Retribution is not good. Don't you like to seal? Then I'll let you have a taste of the feeling of your bloodline being sealed. After finding the location of the demons, Feng Zichen said coldly, "Demons, your retribution has arrived." In the next moment, Feng Zichen used his supreme divine ability and activated Zhou. Boom, boom, boom. In the depths of the stars, invisible resentment surged and rushed towards the demons. This was the resentment of the stars. First, the demons killed his son, and then he was suppressed for so many years. How could Zhou not have resentment towards the demons? Normally, it would be fine if no one triggered it. However, once Feng Zichen guided them, they immediately rushed towards the demons crazily, vowing to make them pay the corresponding price. There was no need for Feng Zichen to personally make a move. Just the resentment of the stars was enough to make the demons suffer. The deterioration of their bloodline and the weakening of their intelligence was only the beginning. Being hated by the stars, in the future, the path of cultivation of the demons would definitely become more and more difficult. In the future, the reason why the demons were getting worse with each generation was not only because they were secretly suppressed, but also because they were hated by the stars. After doing all this, Feng Zichen also entered seclusion, striving to become a primordial chaos as soon as possible. In the blink of an eye, tens of thousands of years had passed. The human race was becoming more and more prosperous. They had already begun to walk out of the ancestral land and spread around. At this moment, the leader of the human race was a woman, known as the Xianxia clan. She reignited the fire of the human race's civilization from the ashes. She was one of the founders of the human race's civilization. At the same time, she was also the reincarnation of the human ancestor Zi clan. It was precisely because of this that she was able to cultivate to Tai Jingxian in just 10,000 years. She was able to fight against 10 Tai Jingxian alone and kill 7 invaders of the human race in succession, making the human race famous. It was not an exaggeration to say that the reincarnation of Daluo Jingxian was extraordinary. 10,000 years after the Xianxia clan's reign, the Queen Mother of the West, the Master of West Kunlun, came to the human race at the invitation of Nuwa. She accepted the Xianxia clan as her disciple and gave her the name of the Nine Heavens Mystic Maiden. After that, another 30,000 years passed. A Khanate crocodile clan walked out of the East Sea and gathered 300 Tai Jingxian and a Daluo Jingxian to attack the human race. The human race was no match for them and retreated in defeat. They had no choice but to retreat to the shore of the East Sea. At the critical moment, the Xianxia clan awakened the true spirit of her previous life and her cultivation recovered to the Daluo Jingxian realm in one fell swoop. She fought with the crocodile clan's Daluo Jingxian and the crocodile ancestor in the East Sea. The crocodile ancestor was no match for them and fled in panic. The human race took the opportunity to counterattack and defeated the Khanate crocodile clan. For a time, the human race dominated the eastern coast of the untainted land and no one dared to invade. Another 10,000 years passed. The crocodile ancestor joined forces with 2 Daluo, a total of 3 Daluo Jingxian, to attack the human race again. Unexpectedly, the Yong clan happened to come out of seclusion. After hearing about this, she immediately left Mount Shouyang and rushed back to the ancestral land. She joined forces with the Xianxia clan and killed the 3 Daluo Jingxian. After this battle, The untainted land was shaken, and no one dared to underestimate the human race anymore. Because of this, the human race officially became one of the major races of the untainted land. Because of the death of the three Daluo Jingxian, the Aqua clan was furious. A patriarch-level figure ignored the warning of the Dragon clan and attacked the human race brazenly. To be called a patriarch by the Aqua clan and not be afraid of the Dragon clan, he could only be a quasi-saint mighty figure. The human race was naturally no match for him. In the Gaochen Palace, Feng Zichen's Thunderlock incarnation was about to teach the quasi-saint of the Aqua clan a lesson. But who knew? In the palace of Empress Hua, someone was faster than him. It was Ao Shui. After so many years, she had also cultivated to the quasi-saint realm. With the appearance of the granddaughter of the ancestral dragon, the patriarch of the Aqua clan did not dare to fight with her. After a while, he retreated with an ugly expression. After this battle, the human race's power skyrocketed. For 1,000,000 years, no one dared to offend them. And after 1,000,000 years of accumulation, the human race's strength could be said to have been fully developed. Another Daluo Jingxian was born. Songshan clan. It was also at this time that the Khanate clans could not hold back anymore. They were afraid that the human race would become stronger and make the Khanate era completely become history. Therefore, they joined forces and invited a late-stage quasi-saint mighty figure to kill the human race. Unfortunately, this mighty figure was severely injured by a beam of moonlight from the sky before he could reach the human race. He had to return to the dojo to recuperate in seclusion. Chang'e no, it was Wang Shu who attacked. At this time, Wang Shu had already reached the peak of the quasi-saint realm. Therefore, he was able to severely injure a late-stage quasi-saint powerhouse with one strike. Wang Shu's attack made many great divines think of the same thing. That was, although the human emperor was no longer around, the divine empress was still around. After that, the human race enjoyed peace for another 1,000,000 years. But Daluo Jingxian was not born. Because the environment of heaven and earth was getting worse and worse. Cultivation was getting more and more difficult. However, the number of Tai Jingxian of the human race had increased by hundreds, and they had become a major force in the primordial world. At this time, the fact that the heavenly Tao wanted the human race to become the protagonist of heaven and earth gradually could not be hidden. The first to understand the mysteries of the heavens was Mother Nuwa. She was the founder of the human race, and all the changes of the human race could not be hidden from her. Nuwa was naturally excited about this. After the human race became the protagonist of heaven and earth, it would bring her endless benefits. How could she not be happy? However, her happiness did not last long, because Zhuan had made his move. After Goddess Nviwa, the second person to understand the mysteries of heaven was Zhuan Ti. They had a grudge against the human race. That was why they knew about this before the three pure ones. At the moment when the heavenly secret was revealed, the luck of the Western sect fell by a few points. While Zhuan was shocked, he also knew the reason. To be enemies with the protagonist of heaven and earth, one naturally had to pay the price. The fall of luck was only the beginning. When the human race really became the protagonist of heaven and earth, the fate of the Western sect would be even worse. Kill! Almost without hesitation, Zhuan attacked. He planned to destroy the human race before the heavenly secret was completely revealed. For the Western sect, and for his own path of cultivation, they had no choice but to do it. Ah! Zhuan, how dare you! Seeing this scene, Nuwa was shocked and angry. Chapter 537. How would they dare? They were the future protagonists of the world. If they really destroyed the human race, would the heavenly Tao let them off? Stop! Although she was anxious, Nuwa was not slow. After discovering Zhuan Ti's intention, she subconsciously took out the Khanate universe cauldron and blasted it at the two of them. Rumble! The mystical abilities of the three saints met in the void. In an instant, the world was in chaos, and the void collapsed. Terrifying fluctuations spread, instantly alarming the entire primordial world. At this moment, the heavenly secrets could no longer be hidden. Almost at the same time, the great mystical abilities of the primordial world sensed it. Zhuan, how dare you! As soon as he obtained the heavenly secrets, the Grand Pure One attacked. He took out the Khanate cardinal treasure, the Taiji painting, and attacked Xianxia. After all, the Grand Pure One was the sect master of Ren's school. This person could be understood as the human race. Of course, it could also be understood as the human race. It could change with the situation. Therefore, after the human race became the protagonist of the world, the benefits that the Grand Pure One received might not be as great as that of Nuwa, but it would not be less. With such a relationship, how could the Grand Pure One watch the human race be destroyed? Therefore, after seeing Xianxia attack the human race, even with his state of mind, he could not remain calm. Almost without hesitation, he attacked. After the Grand Pure One, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning and the Grand Master of Heaven also attacked. If the human race became the protagonist of the world, they would not be able to obtain any benefits from it. However, Xianxia would definitely not obtain any benefits. He would even suffer a backlash from the providence of the world. Just because of that, the Grand Master of Heaven and the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning had to attack no matter what. There were not many opportunities to suppress Xianxia. There was no doubt about the result of 2 against 4. After a few moves, Xianxia was beaten until his face was covered in dirt and he returned in defeat. On the other side, while the 6 saints were fighting, Feng Zichen was also furious. However, he did not attack Xianxia. Instead, he took out the Zichen sword and slashed at Mount Meru. With the 3 Pure Ones and Nuwa taking action, Xianxia would not end well for Xianxia. It did not matter whether Feng Zichen took action or not. It would be better to make a scene on Mount Meru while Xianxia was held back by the 4 saints to teach them a lesson. It was also a good way to let them know that humans were not to be trifled with. Swish, Zichen's sword traveled through the air and sliced off a part of Mount Meru's peak before slashing at the pond, flipping it over and allowing the innate liquid inside to flow out. Then, Zichen drew a sword flower in the air and swept away the pool of golden lotuses of merit planted by the Buddhists. At this moment, the disciples of the Western sect finally reacted and rushed toward Zichen. Unfortunately, the West was too barren. Apart from the 2 saints, Jane and Xianxia, there was no one else who was worth mentioning. The West had only managed to find 3 Daluo Jingxian. How dare you make a scene in the saints' dojo? Do you want to die? The 3 Daluo Jingxian scolded loudly while activating their innate spiritual treasures. They planned to suppress Zichen's sword first and hand it over to the saint to deal with. However, they had overestimated themselves. Zichen's sword swept gently and boundless sword chi burst out from the void, killing the 3 Daluo Jingxian on the spot. Feng Zichen was now a half-step primordial chaos. Even an ordinary sage to be was not his match, let alone a mere Daluo Jingxian. It was normal for him to be killed in an instant. How dare you? Xianxia naturally sensed the change in Mount Meru at the first moment. In an instant, the 2 of them changed their expressions and became extremely unsightly. Usually, they were the ones who raided other people's homes. They did not expect that the tables would turn. Today, it was their turn to have their homes raided. This caused the 2 of them to feel both furious and aggrieved. Chi true chi. Then, Xianxia and Xianxia wanted to leave and return to Mount Meru to give Feng Zichen retribution. However, it was not easy to see these 2 people suffer. How could the 3 Pure Ones and Nuwa saints let them leave so easily? For a moment, the 4 of them attacked even more fiercely. Xianxia and Xianxia were worried about Mount Meru and did not want to continue fighting. They directly used their strongest means and revealed their Zhang 6 golden bodies with 12 heads and 24 arms. They used all kinds of mysterious magic to attack the 4 people. In this regard, the 3 Pure Ones' response was very simple. They directly took out hundreds of innate spiritual treasures and destroyed all the magic that was coming at them. They also broke the Zhang 6 golden bodies of Xianxia and Xianxia. Saint Xianxia had no choice but to step forward and stand in front of the 3 Pure Ones. He did not care about being beaten until his skin and flesh were torn. He endured the attacks of the 3 people and fought for a chance for Saint Xianxia to escape. Saint Xianxia did not hesitate. He used the green lotus flag to send the cauldron of heaven and earth flying. Then, he endured a few of Nuwa's magic and forced himself to break out. He did not look back and attacked Feng Zichen. Poor Nuwa's strength had fallen greatly because of the matter of mending the sky. She had become the weakest of the 6 saints in one fell swoop. Even Xianxia could suppress her. Saint Xianxia had just returned to Mount Meru when he saw Feng Zichen killing 3 Daluo Jingxian with one sword strike. Ah! Zichen clan. You're courting death, do you know that? Taoist Zhuan Ti's face was distorted. He raised the wonderful seven treasures tree and swung it at Feng Zichen. Boundless killing intent burst out from his body, and the world was dyed blood red. The three Daluo Jingxian could be said to be the only three Daluo Jingxian in the West apart from the devil cult. It was almost equivalent to half of the Western clans. But now, they had all been killed by Feng Zichen. The anger in Taoist Zhuan Ti's heart. One could imagine. Buzz buzz buzz. Zichen's sword hummed softly and emitted an unparalleled sword light. He controlled the power of the connate sword Dao and slashed at the wonderful seven treasures tree. Boom! After the attack, the universe was in turmoil, and nothing existed. A terrifying power erupted. The wonderful seven treasures tree flew back to Taoist Zhuan Ti's hand, while Zichen's sword was collapsed into the depths of the void. Feng Zichen did not use any external force in this battle. He only relied on his own strength. The result was self-evident. Feng Zichen was defeated. He was no match for Saint Zhuan Ti. Yes, there was nothing wrong with that. There was a difference of one major realm and four minor realms between half-step primordial chaos and the fourth heaven of the Saint realm. If Feng Zichen could still defeat Saint Zhuan Ti without using any external force, that would be a problem. Hiss! The great mediums who were watching the battle gasped in shock when they saw this scene. They were not surprised by Saint Zhuan Ti's strength, but by Feng Zichen's strength. It had only been a short while, and Feng Zichen had the strength to contend against a saint. It was too shocking. Although Feng Zichen was defeated in the battle just now, wasn't he not injured? Saint Zhuan Ti attacked with hatred. Feng Zichen was defeated but not injured. Didn't this indirectly express his strength? The strength of a saint was obvious to all. It was normal for Feng Zichen to be defeated. It was abnormal for him not to be injured. Previously, Feng Zichen could also fight against a saint. However, that was relying on external forces after all. It was far less shocking than fighting against a saint with his own strength. His progress was too fast. Good. Not only did the attack with hatred not work, but it also increased the other party's reputation. Saint Zhuan Ti was so angry that he laughed. Especially when he discovered that the 8 treasures merit pool was damaged. The pool water splashed all over the ground, and the merit golden lotuses in the pool had disappeared. He began to tremble as he spoke. His entire body was trembling. It was obvious that he was about to explode from anger. Zichen clan, if the poor way doesn't kill you today, how will I have the face to stand in the primordial world in the future? With a loud roar, Taoist Zhuan Ti once again used the Zhang 6 golden body and charged into the depths of the void. Obviously, he wanted to use the Zichen sword to track Feng Zichen's whereabouts. However, Feng Zichen saw that he had already taken advantage of the situation and had even figured out the saint's background. He had no intention of fighting with Taoist Zhuan Ti and planned to leave. With that thought in mind, Zichen's sword directly cut through the void and flew towards the Gauchen star. Thief! Where are you going? Seeing that Feng Zichen was about to escape, Taoist Zhuan Ti was furious and hurriedly chased after him. The speed of the two was extremely fast. In a moment, they passed through layers of space and arrived in front of the boundless starry sky. Zichen's sword flashed and flew into the boundless starry sky, disappearing into the Gauchen star. When Saint Zhuan Ti saw this, he wanted to follow. However, just as he approached the edge of the boundless starry sky and had yet to step into it, he saw Zhoxing rotating with a loud bang. It automatically formed the Milky Way cosmic light array and evolved into the vast Milky Way, blocking him outside. Halt! In the boundless starry sky, Feng Zichen's loud voice sounded. Fellow Taoist Ziwei, what do you mean by this? Knowing the power of the array in front of him, even with Saint Zhuan Ti's strength, he did not dare to step into it easily. He could only stand outside the boundless starry sky and ask with a sullen face. Nothing. The boundless starry sky does not see any outsiders. Therefore, Saint, you should leave. Feng Zichen appeared from the boundless starry sky and said unhurriedly. At this moment. Not to mention that he and Gauchen were the same person. Even if the two of them had a grudge, he could not let Saint Zhuan Ti step into the boundless starry sky. Not to mention him. Even any great divine ability in the primordial world could not enter the boundless starry sky without a suitable reason. It was because Zhoxing had not been repaired. Any large vibration could cause Zhouxing to shatter again. If Saint Zhuan-Ti were to make a move here, the Zhouxing that had just been repaired would probably shatter again. Therefore, no matter what, Feng Zichen could not let Taoist Zhuan-Ti, who was filled with killing intent, enter the boundless starry sky. Fellow Taoist Ziwei, poor Wei knows that you have a good relationship with Emperor Gaochen. But are you really going to stop poor Wei for the sake of Emperor Gaochen? You have to know that poor Wei is a saint. After being humiliated again and again, Taoist Zhuan-Ti was furious to the extreme. He stared at Feng Zichen with killing intent and said, "Rumble." When the saint was angry, the world changed color. A heavy pressure filled the air, causing the laws to distort. However, with a light snort, the Pangu Celestial shattered this formless pressure. Saint Zhuan-Ti, you don't have to threaten me. Don't talk about my relationship with Gaochen. You remember? That's fine. Come. Why don't the two of us go to the Purple Cloud Palace now? If the Tao ancestor agrees to let you in, I won't stop you and will immediately let you in. What do you think? Feng Zichen walked in front of Saint Zhuan-Ti and said with a smile. When the demon race attacked the humans, Feng Zichen had borrowed the power of Ziwei Star. It was also at that time that everyone came to the conclusion that he had a good relationship with Feng Zichen. Now, Saint Zhuan-Ti was chasing after Emperor Gaochen. It was completely reasonable for Great Emperor Ziwei to help. You! Saint Zhuan-Ti pointed at Feng Zichen and was so angry that he could not speak. Go to the Purple Cloud Palace to see the Tao ancestor? Not to mention whether the Tao ancestor would care about such a small matter. He had just wanted to destroy the human race. If the Tao ancestor saw him, he would probably directly suppress him in the chaos outside the heavens. If he went to see Tao ancestor Hongjun now, wouldn't he be courting death? Since you want to die, poor Wei will fulfill your wish. Taoist Zhuan-Ti was so angry that he actually had a desperate thought. He completely lost his mind and directly activated the wonderful Seven Treasures tree with all his strength to attack Gaochen. Why else would it be said that saints were very scary? If they were really wrong to the extreme, saints could directly flip the table and destroy the primordial world. Then they could establish the earth, fire, water, and wind and rebuild the world. In any case, they would not die and would not be tainted by karma. As for the karma of destroying the world? If the world was gone, how could there be any karma? It had long been destroyed with the destruction of heaven and earth. Moreover, the merit obtained from re-establishing heaven and earth was enough for them to pay for everything. Therefore, rational saints were not scary. What was scary was saints who had lost their rationality. Because no one knew what they would do when they were angry. Just like Saint Zhuan-Ti now. In order to vent the anger in his heart, he did not hesitate to destroy Gaochen. It was too crazy. Zhuan-Ti, how dare you? At this moment, Feng Zichen was really frightened. He did not expect Saint Zhuan-Ti to be so crazy and dare to directly attack Gaochen. Shocked and angry, Feng Zichen was about to activate the Galaxy Cosmic Light Array to block this attack. However, before he could do anything, a shocking change happened. Gaochen sensed the danger and suddenly burst out with a bright light. At the same time, an inexplicable fluctuation was emitted from his body. In the blink of an eye, it filled the entire primordial world. In the next moment, Ziwei Star, South Pole Star, and Huta Palace of the Netherworld shook at the same time. 3 terrifying emperors' auras rose. Together with Emperor Gaochen's aura, a total of 4 emperors' auras spread around Gaochen. 4 emperors and 4 emperors. The indistinct purple gold palace, the towering green jade palace. They hold the power of the 7 governments of Ziwei and are the masters of the dynasty. The 3 magnificents Wuxia, the 5 latitudes Neon Jing. They are the pivot of creation and the great handle of humans and gods. In the Daluo sky, in the golden palace, the 4 emperors and 4 emperors, Heavenly Lord Jinrong Yuxiang. In the void. Suddenly, the 4 emperors' words were transmitted. Then, 4 majestic shadows of emperors appeared in the boundless starry sky. The emperor's aura rumbled and filled the world, shaking the past, present, and future. Rumble! The majesty of the 4 emperors connected into one and was vast and boundless. It was as if the Milky Way had fallen, carrying an unparalleled force and colliding with the wonderful 7 treasures tree that was rushing over. Bang! The wonderful Seven Treasures tree was directly sent flying by the Emperor's aura and fell into the primordial world. Chapter 538. What? Then, under Saint Xianxia's incredulous gaze, the Emperor's might swept over and directly knocked him out of the boundless starry sky, smashing him fiercely into the primordial world. After landing, Saint Xianxia first opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of saint blood. Then, with a blank expression, he looked straight at the starry sky. He was injured. The kind that could not be recovered by the power of the heavenly path. This was the first time he had been injured since he became a saint. A saint would actually be injured in the primordial world? In Saint Xianxia's opinion, this was an extremely unbelievable thing. However, it really happened, and it happened to him. Saint Xianxia had no choice but to believe it. How could this be? Saint Xianxia forcefully suppressed his injuries and once again came to the boundless starry sky. He asked Feng Zichen with a puzzled expression. Even the other 5 sages had stopped fighting and ended their battles hastily. They all looked over at Jianghu. The primordial world. There was actually a power that could hurt a saint. This was simply too unbelievable. If he could not figure out the reason, the saint would not be able to live peacefully in the future. However, the saint was puzzled. Feng Zichen was also very puzzled. He was not surprised that the 4 emperors could defeat the saint when they worked together. After all, no matter what, the 4 emperors were also the supreme beings of heaven and earth. They were the supreme gods who ruled the primordial world. If they could be humiliated by saints casually, then where was the dignity of the supreme beings of heaven and earth? However, Feng Zichen really did not know that the power of the 4 emperors could hurt saints. Fortunately, soon, someone gave an explanation. Xianxia, you've gone too far today. The 4 emperors are the supreme beings of heaven and earth. How can they be humiliated by others? This injury is the backlash of the heavenly path. It's your punishment for humiliating the 4 emperors. A faint Tao voice came from the sky. It was Tao ancestor Hongjun who spoke to explain to everyone. The position of the saint was determined by the heavenly path, but similarly, the position of the 4 emperors was also determined by the heavenly path. Although in terms of status, the saint was slightly higher than the great emperor. However, this did not mean that the saint could bully the 4 emperors at will. If the 4 royals were in the wrong, it would be fine if you, a saint, reprimanded them with a few words based on your status. However, if you wanted to kill them, the heavenly Tao could not ignore it. The saints only had the right to recommend the 4 great emperors. They did not have the right to appoint or manage them. Only the heavenly axiom had the final say on how to deal with the 4 imperials. If a saint were to make a move, it would be overstepping his authority. Therefore, if the saints attacked the 4 great emperors, they would definitely suffer a backlash from the heavenly Tao. Greetings, Tao ancestor, master, teacher. Hearing Tao ancestor Hongjun's voice, everyone immediately bowed towards the sky. However, Tao ancestor Hongjun did not appear. The heavenly Tao has issued a decree to establish the human race as the main characters of the world. Quickly come to the Purple Cloud Palace and discuss a constitution. Tao ancestor Hongjun's voice sounded. He summoned everyone to the Purple Cloud Palace to discuss the matters of the human race. Yes, as you command. Hearing that, the 6 saints, Hao Qianyaoqi, Feng Zichen, and Lei Zhe all headed to the Purple Cloud Palace. How could an Emperor Realm Cultivator bypass Great Emperor Ziwei? In the Purple Cloud Palace, everyone sat down and waited for Tao ancestor Hongjun to appear. It could be said that apart from Gaochen and Hutu, all the people in power in the primordial world had arrived. The heavenly Tao intends to establish the 3 emperors for the human race to occupy the providence of heaven, earth, and man to help the human race prosper. What do you think about this? After a while, Tao ancestor Hongjun appeared and said, Master, may I know what's so special about these 3 emperors? The Grand Pure One thought for a moment and asked. The 3 emperors are heaven, earth, and man. Those who become the 3 emperors are comparable to primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian in the primordial world. Therefore they are called absolute saints. They are respected as saints and enjoy the worship of all living beings. Tao ancestor Hongjun explained. What? Everyone was shocked when they heard that. Those were 3 experts who were comparable to saints. Even the magi and demons were not as strong as them. Moreover, with 3 more saints, would their status be shaken? For a moment, everyone's thoughts drifted away. Master, may I know the difference between absolute saints and saints? The Grand Pure One grasped the main point and asked again. A saint's essence soul is entrusted to the heavenly Tao. It exists with the heavens and the Tao. It can transform the power of the heavenly Tao for its own use. Therefore, it is invincible in the primordial world. As for the absolute saint, it uses the power of destiny of heaven and earth to raise its realm to the level of primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. However, its essence soul is not entrusted to the heavenly Tao. They do not have the various abilities of saints. The four-way emperor's position is also considered a type of absolute saint karma position. How could Tao ancestor Hongju not know what his disciple was thinking? He explained in detail to calm him down. Hearing this, the saints heaved a sigh of relief. Once Tao ancestor Hongjun said that, they all understood. Back then, before Di Jun attained the Tao, he could fight against a saint. His methods were similar to the absolute saint karma position. It was just that it was a little rough. Do you have a suitable candidate for the 3 emperors of the human race? Tao ancestor Hongjun did not want to waste any more time and went straight to the point. It was coming. The climax was coming. Hearing this, Feng Zichen sat up straight. Wasn't this the purpose of Tao ancestor Hongjun calling everyone here? The so-called general trend of heaven and earth was only a general direction set by the heavenly Tao. As for the specific details, of course, they were discussed by the saints. This was the benefit of becoming a saint. Just like now, everyone sat in a row and divided the fruits. You took a little, I took a little, and soon, all the benefits of the human race were divided up. As for the opinions of the human race, they did not care at all. They had already become the main character of heaven and earth. What else did they want? The weak. What right did they have to divide the benefits? It was precisely because of this that Feng Zichen came here. He wanted everyone to understand. It was not that the human race did not have any experts. In short, the most important thing for Feng Zichen to come to the Purple Cloud Palace today was to fight for the benefits of the human race. If he could not do it, he would start to cause trouble. If he really could not do it, he would directly flip the table. No one would be able to end well. Master, my brother Fuxi has great merit and great luck. He should be the heavenly emperor of the human race. As soon as Tao ancestor Hongjun finished speaking, Nuwa could not wait to say, this position of the holy karma sounded better than the position of Emperor Shi of the demon race. Feng Zichen thought for a moment and did not object. First of all, Nuwa was the holy mother of the human race. If she wanted her brother to take charge of the human race for her, no one would be able to say that she was uncomfortable. Secondly, Fuxi had never attacked the human race. On the contrary, he had been kind to the human race. If Fuxi had not passed down the connate 8 trigrams to the human race would not have developed so quickly. It had to be said that the connate 8 trigrams had helped the human race too much in terms of seeking fortune, avoiding disaster, and deducing the secrets of heaven. It was precisely because of the above considerations that Feng Zichen did not refuse. Moreover, Fuxi becoming the heavenly emperor of the human race was also a bad thing for the human race. Firstly, he was powerful and was destined to become the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian in the future. With him joining the human race would definitely have another top-notch combat power and fight for more rights to speak in the primordial world. Secondly, as one of the 3 emperors of the demon race, Fuxi had a portion of the fate of the demon race. If he joined the human race, this portion of fate would flow into the human race to strengthen the human race. In this case, Feng Zichen had no reason to refuse. Feng Zichen had no reason to refuse, and the other saints had no reason to refuse. Moreover, the candidates they proposed later had to be approved by Nuwa. Otherwise, no matter how much they praised, it would be useless if Nuwa did not agree. In that case, the position of the heavenly emperor of the human race will be handed over to Fuxi. Seeing that no one objected, Tao ancestor Hongjun nodded and said. The Tao ancestor had a golden mouth and jade words. What he said was the heavenly law. With one word, the heavenly secrets changed and completely decided that Fuxi would become the heavenly emperor of the human race. Junior sister Nuwa, I owe you a favor. The poor Wei has a disciple named Guang Chengzi. His aptitude and talent are among the best in the primordial world. He can be reincarnated into the human race and become the earthly emperor. What do you think? Yuan turned his head and said to Nuwa. He also knew that it was useless to ask Dao ancestor Hongjun for the human race. He could only ask Nuwa. As long as Nuwa did not agree, it would be useless for anyone to agree. Junior sister, third senior brother also has a disciple named Duobao. He was transformed from the treasure-snatching rock and is one of the most blessed people in the primordial world. If he becomes the human emperor of the human race, not to mention how much fate he will bring to the human race, but in the future, the human race will have a lot of innate spiritual treasures. After Yuanshi Tianzuan, Tong Tian's sect leader continued. The two brothers were not bad. One was the earthly emperor, and the other was the human emperor. They did not fight for it, nor were they strong. They directly divided the remaining two emperors of the human race. To be honest, Feng Zichen was a little tempted when he heard this. He knew about Duobao's luck. It could be said that the innate spiritual treasures on the treasure-snatching rock were all fated with Duobao. If he could become the human emperor of the human race, even if he could not achieve what Tong Tian's sect leader said, the human race would not lack innate spiritual treasures. But it could also make the human race's innate spiritual treasures less scarce. If it were not for the fact that Feng Zichen already had a plan for the candidates for the earthly emperor and the human emperor, he was afraid that he would directly hint to Nuwa to agree. But unfortunately, compared with the two candidates in Feng Zichen's mind, even Fushi could not compare, let alone Duobao. Teacher, I also have a suitable candidate here. Seeing that Yuanshi Tianzuan and Tong Tian's sect leader had already promised Nuwa all kinds of benefits in order to obtain the qualifications of the earthly emperor and the human emperor, Zhuan-Ti and Zhuan-Ti could not help but feel a little anxious. They knew that with their relationship with Nuwa, it was impossible for them to take the positions of the two emperors from Nuwa. So, they directly said to Dao ancestor Hongjun. Zhuan-Ti and Zhuan-Ti were really sneaky. Seeing that they could not persuade Nuwa, they planned to think of a way to persuade Dao ancestor Hongjun. Their plan was very clever. Dao ancestor Hongjun was Nuwa's teacher. If he directly decided on a candidate, even if Nuwa was dissatisfied, she could only grit her teeth and accept it. Otherwise, directly refuse. Refuse Dao ancestor Hongjun's face? Wasn't this looking for trouble for themselves? As long as they were not stupid, no one would do it. Unfortunately, Zhuan Ti's plan was very good, but they seemed to have forgotten that because of Feng Zichen's orders, the position of the human emperor would not have anything to do with them, the Western sect, no matter what. Fellow Taoists, save it. Let's not talk about what you did just now. Let's talk about how you secretly attacked the human race back then and formed a death feud with the human race. How can the position of the human emperor fall into your hands? Before Dao ancestor Hongjun could speak, the Grand Pure One said lazily. In his heart, he was really happy. Originally, he was still thinking about how to kick the two of them out. However, he did not expect that the two of them would court death back then and cut off their path today. It really saved him a lot of trouble. At this moment, even the Grand Pure One could not help but sigh. Fate was playing tricks on people. Back then, when Zhuan-Ti attacked the human race, who would have thought that this inconspicuous postnatal race would become the main character of the world today? At the same time, the Grand Pure One was secretly glad. Fortunately, the one who attacked back then was Zhuan-Ti and not the three Pure Ones. Otherwise, he would be in trouble today. Zhuan-Ti, before the human race prospers, the two of you will stay in the Purple Cloud Palace to seek Dao. After a moment of silence, Dao ancestor Hongjun said. He was going to put them under house arrest in the Purple Cloud Palace. However, Dao ancestor Hongjun had no choice. If he did not keep the two of them in the Purple Cloud Palace, there was no need to think about it. For the future of the Western sect, the two of them would definitely secretly trip up the human race. Yes, teacher. Yes, teacher. Even though he was unwilling, he was bound to be weak. Zhuan-Ti had no choice but to nod in agreement. With the elimination of Zhuan-Ti, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning and the Grand Master of Heaven were even more confident. Their greatest enemy was gone. Who else could Nuwa work with other than them? As for the Haotian Jade Pool, they were fighting with each other, but unfortunately, there was no one under them. Until now, the two of them, the dignified Primordial Lord, were only slightly better than a commander without an army. It was really difficult for them to take out a candidate to become the human emperor. Just as Nuwa's face gradually showed impatience, Feng Zichen finally spoke. Hee hee. He first smiled contemptuously, then said in a mocking tone, "Fellow Taoists, have you forgotten something? Since it's for the human race to choose an emperor, don't you need to ask for the opinion of the human race and—" "My opinion?" The two of them treated the human race as if they were nothing and divided the interests of the human race in front of him. This really angered Feng Zichen. Ha! The human race? The heavenly lord of primordial beginning was so angry that he laughed. The opinion of the human race? The human race did not even have a single great magician. What opinion could they have? Moreover, ask for his opinion? Who did this great Emperor Ziwei think he was? He had to interfere in everything. Ask for your opinion? The heavenly lord of primordial beginning asked uncertainly. That's right. Feng Zichen nodded. Ah. This poor Wei is a little confused. This matter involves the human emperor. Poor Wei can understand asking for the opinion of the human race. But fellow Taoist Ziwei is not a human. Then why do we have to ask for your opinion on this matter? The heavenly lord of primordial beginning asked in an unfriendly tone. Obviously, he felt that Feng Zichen was meddling too much. Chapter 539. Ha ha. Why? Feng Zichen was not afraid of the primeval Lord of Heaven's threat. Instead, he stared into his eyes and said word by word. Because I am the great of Ziwei. Without my consent, the light of the Ziwei star will not shine on the human emperor, and it will not descend the emperor's aura. Is this enough? Feng Zichen was very confident. Even if he was not the leader of the human race, with the Ziwei star around, the human emperor's choice would not go around him. The Ziwei star was the star of the emperor, the symbol of the emperor. All the emperors in the world were bathed in the light of the Ziwei star. Therefore, an emperor who was not recognized by the Ziwei star was not orthodox. Only the emperor who was favored by the Ziwei star was orthodox. You? The primeval Lord of Heaven was speechless for a moment. He had forgotten about this. The main reason was that the Ziwei star had been sealed by Di Jun and had not appeared in the primeval world for a long time. So much so that everyone subconsciously ignored this point. Even so, what can you do? Poor Wei and the others preach on behalf of the heavens and act with the general trend. Even if you are dissatisfied, do you dare to go against the general trend and deny the choice we have made? After taking a deep breath, the primeval Lord of Heaven gradually calmed down and said coldly to Feng Zichen. The opinion of the great of Ziwei was very important. However, as long as the will of the saints reached an agreement, they could forcibly set the rules for the prosperity of the human race. As for the opinions of others, they were insignificant. The power of one saint might not be able to change the general trend of heaven and earth, but if all the saints worked together, they could even change the general trend of heaven and earth in a small area. This was the most terrifying thing about saints. I don't dare. But someone dares. Have you all forgotten that the human race also has great divine ability masters? The human emperor, the great Taoist priests, Pangu, and the Zichen clan are not dead yet. The supreme treasure of the human race, the innate supreme treasure that symbolizes the supreme power of the human race, the human Tao Emperor's seal, is still in his hands. Aren't you afraid that the great Taoist priests will get angry and directly destroy your disciples by bypassing him and letting them reincarnate into the human sovereign? Feng Zichen shook his head and smiled. This was the advantage of hiding in the dark. If he came to the Purple Cloud Palace as the Ren Huang, the three pure ones would be able to suppress him and force him to agree to their plan. However, with Feng Zichen hiding in the dark, everyone had some misgivings and didn't dare to act recklessly. Hearing this, the three purities frowned at the same time. Such a thing was very likely to happen. With Feng Zichen's identity as the first human emperor, it was not difficult for him to find a way to kill the person they had chosen. Moreover, there was no need for him to kill. As long as the new emperor did not hand over the human race's imperial seal when he ascended the throne, the so-called three sovereigns of heaven, earth, and human would all become a joke. Just as the Grand Master of Heaven and the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning were in a difficult position, the Grand Pure One's eyes lit up. He thought of a solution and said to Nuwa, "Junior Sister Nuwa, the matter of the three sovereigns is a private matter of the human race after all. The poor Wei and the others will not participate. However, when the three sovereigns appear, they can't do without a teacher's guidance. Can you give the merit of the imperial preceptor to the three senior brothers? The Grand Pure One knew that the position of the three sovereigns was extremely important. Feng Zichen would definitely not watch them fall into the hands of the three sections. Then, he would take a step back and seek the position of the imperial preceptor to share some of the merit of the three sovereigns. The Grand Pure One did not lack merit. However, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning and the Grand Master of Heaven lacked it. If they did not plan some merit for their disciples to eliminate the negative karma on them, their cultivation level would really stop there in the future. That was why the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning and the Grand Master of Heaven were so eager to become the three sovereigns. I'll do as you say, senior brother. Nuwa weighed the pros and cons and nodded in agreement. Feng Zichen did not have any objections. He had to agree. At the end of the day, after the liches, the three pure ones were the greatest forces in the primordial world. If they did not share the opportunity for the human race to prosper, the human race might not be able to become the main characters of the world. How could the three pure ones be trifled with? Even the heavenly Tao was afraid of them and tried its best to separate them. From this, it could be seen how terrifying the three pure ones were. Not to mention that the human race had yet to become the main characters of the world. Even if they really became the main characters of the world, they might not be taken seriously by the three pure ones. In that case, how could the human race fight the three pure ones? Since the three pure ones had taken a step back, the human race should also take a step back. If they really offended the three pure ones, the human race would only get endless trouble and not any benefits. Since you've already made a decision, let's follow the plan. Leave. Seeing that the matter had come to an end, Dao Ancestor Hong Jun waved his hand and asked everyone to leave. Master, Dao Ancestor, we'll take our leave. Everyone left obediently. After leaving the Purple Cloud Palace, Nuwa was anxious about the reincarnation of Fuxi. She said goodbye to everyone and left in a hurry. Hao Tian and Yao Qi were worried about the heavenly courts and left in a hurry. At this moment, those left in the chaos outside the sky. There were also the three pure ones, Ziwei and Lei Zhe. As for Zhuan Ti, he was left in the Purple Cloud Palace by Dao Ancestor Hong Jun, fellow Taoist Lei Zhe. Poor Wei and the others have something to say to fellow Taoist Ziwei. Please make it convenient. The Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning bowed and said to Lei Zhe. Seeing this, how could Lei Zhe not understand what the three pure ones meant? They clearly wanted to take advantage of the fact that he was alone to give him retribution. Lei Zhe understood, but he did not show it on his face. Instead, he smiled and said to the three pure ones, Sure. I'll leave now. With that, Lei Zhe bowed to the three pure ones and turned to leave. As a result, only the three pure ones, Feng Zichen, and the other two were left. Why? Do you want to take revenge on me? Facing the three pure ones alone, Feng Zichen's expression did not change. He even raised his eyebrows and took the initiative to ask. Without a doubt, this was the revenge of the three pure ones. Zhuan Ti and the other two had embarrassed them in the Purple Cloud Palace. They even dared to ambush them halfway, let alone Feng Zichen. No. It's just that poor Wei's hands are itchy. I want to compete with fellow Taoist Ziwei. I hope that fellow Taoist will not be stingy with your guidance. Shaking his head, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning said with a smile. Oh, I see. Then, are the three of you going to attack together? Nodding, Feng Zichen said without fear. Knowing that going to the Purple Cloud Palace this time would definitely offend the three pure ones, how could he not be prepared? Therefore, he had set up a backup plan early on. As long as the three pure ones did not join forces, he had nothing to fear. If the three pure ones joined forces, he could only consider himself unlucky. Anyway, he would not die. At most, he would be beaten up. Poor Wei alone is enough to deal with rebels. The Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning took a step forward and said. As a saint, he was suspected of bullying the weak by attacking Feng Zichen, who had yet to reach the primordial chaos Tao realm. If the three pure ones attacked together, their reputation in the primordial world would be completely ruined regardless of whether they won or lost. After the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning finished speaking, the Grand Pure One and the Grand Master of Heaven left directly to show that they would not interfere in this battle. Fellow Taoist Ziwei, please. After the two of them walked away, The heavenly lord of primordial beginning did not show any modesty. He gestured for Feng Zichen to attack first. How could the heavenly lord of primordial beginning take the initiative to deal with Feng Zichen, given his prideful personality? In that case, I won't stand on ceremony. With a thought, Feng Zichen communicated with the cosmic light array of the galaxy in the distance. He activated the god of Pangu and punched towards this place from afar. Rumble! The chaos shattered as if it was splitting the world apart. Terrifying power raged and drowned the figure of the heavenly lord of primordial beginning. What a powerful power! Shocked, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning did not dare to let his guard down. He hurriedly raised the central Wutu Earth apricot yellow flag and raised 10,000 golden lotuses to envelop himself. The power that could destroy everything surged over and shattered the golden lotuses one by one. However, the Wutu Earth apricot yellow flag trembled slightly and the golden lotuses were reborn. They were endless and entangled with the surging power, firmly protecting the heavenly lord of primordial beginning. Fellow Taoist Ziwei, with this attack alone, you can be considered invincible below the saints in the primordial world. The heavenly lord of primordial beginning looked at the raging power around him and could not help but sigh. The power of this attack had definitely reached the level of primordial chaos. Otherwise, it would not be enough to destroy the chaos. However, after waiting for a long time, he did not hear Feng Zichen's reply. At this moment, a bad idea appeared in the heavenly lord of primordial beginning's mind. Could it be? Shocked and furious, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning could not help but shout loudly. Fellow Taoist Ziwei! Fellow Taoist Ziwei! Fellow Taoist Ziwei! He shouted 3 times in a row, but still, no one answered. The heavenly lord of primordial beginning's face had completely darkened. Damn it! Panga's banner! Furious, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning directly took out the Panga's banner and blasted it to the side. This was the chaos outside the heavens, not the primordial world. Therefore, when the heavenly lord of primordial beginning attacked, he did not have the slightest scruple. He almost used his greatest strength to revive the Panga's banner. Rumble! Suddenly, a huge banner appeared in the midst of the chaos. The size of the banner was beyond imagination. On the banner, there was a supreme image of the great god Pangu holding the heaven-splitting divine axe and splitting the heavens and the earth. On the banner, the heavenly divine baleful chi burst out, as if it was going to destroy the chaos and reopen the heavens and the earth. Boom! The Panga's banner vibrated. A power that could tear apart the chaos in Hongmeng, shatter the space and time of the heavens, control the mysteries of all laws, and open up the universe suddenly burst out. In the next moment, nothing existed. The chaos aura around the heavenly lord of primordial beginning was completely wiped out, forming a state of nothingness. Ziwei, the poor Wei will not let you off. The heavenly lord of primordial beginning looked around. There was no trace of Feng Zichen around. He had taken advantage of the opportunity when he was defending and had already escaped. This time, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning was furious. A terrifying aura leaked out, stirring up the chaos. On the other side, Feng Zichen had already run back to the boundless starry sky. He was not a fool. How could he insist on fighting the heavenly lord of primordial beginning when he knew that he was no match for him? He did not have the habit of being abused. Therefore, after seizing the opportunity, Feng Zichen directly ran away, leaving the heavenly lord of primordial beginning alone to sulk in the chaos outside the heavens. He was not afraid of the heavenly lord of primordial beginning's revenge. As long as he did not leave the boundless starry sky, even Tao ancestor Hongjun could not do anything to him. To Feng Zichen, while the boundless starry sky trapped him, it also protected him, making it impossible for others to attack him. This was the so-called blessing and disaster were interdependent. Time flew. In the blink of an eye, another 10,000 years had passed. On this day, Nuwa raised the connate cardinal treasure, the cauldron of heaven and earth in the palace of Empress Hua. She used its power to recreate the universe to bypass the 6 paths of reincarnation, and forcefully opened a reincarnation passage. She sent the remaining bit of Fushi's innate undying true spirit into it, and reincarnated it into the human race. Although Nuwa and Hutu had no enmity, Fushi had perished together with the candle dragon. With this karma, she did not dare to let Fushi's true spirit reincarnate through the 6 paths of reincarnation. If Huta secretly tampered with it, it would be all over. Therefore, after thinking about it, Nuwa decided to open a reincarnation passage herself. Although this move was troublesome, it was safer. And just before Fushi's true spirit entered the reincarnation passage, Feng Zichen agreed to Nuwa's request and sent a wisp of torch flame and a wisp of imperial purple qi into Fushi's true spirit. Torch flame was formed by the destiny of the human race. The imperial purple qi was the origin of the Emperor Star. It was formed by fusing with the path of the Emperor, and was the foundation of becoming an emperor. This qi was extremely pure, had endless mysteries, could destroy all methods and avoid all methods. It could be said that once the qi was released, all methods would not be able to get close to it. The imperial purple qi was so mysterious, of course, there could not be a lot of it. Even if one searched the entire Emperor Star several times, there were only 9 of them. If Nuwa had not come forward to ask, no matter what, Feng Zichen would not have given it to Fushi so easily, let alone add a wisp of torch flame. With these 2 treasures, Fushi would definitely become the heavenly emperor of the human race. After seeing Fushi's true spirit enter the reincarnation, Feng Zichen withdrew his gaze and focused on deducing the secrets of heaven. That was because he had a feeling that the rise of the human race might not be as smooth as everyone had imagined. There was a feeling that told him that the primordial world would undergo a huge change soon, and the human race would definitely be affected. If he was not careful, not to mention becoming the protagonist of the world, it would be difficult to even protect himself. When one's strength reached Feng Zichen's level, any feeling did not come out of thin air, but a sign of the future. Since he had sensed it, it meant that the possibility of this matter happening had reached 80%. Therefore, Feng Zichen abandoned all distracting thoughts and focused on deducing the secrets of heaven. This kind of thing could only be solved by deducing the source. Even if it could not be solved, it was better to know in advance so that he could make plans early and reduce the losses. When Feng Zichen was deducing, the 3 pure ones and the others also noticed that something was wrong and began deducing one after another, trying to find out what had happened. It was also because of this that Feng Zichen's full attention was involved, causing him to neglect some things. For example, long before Fushi's reincarnation, Nuwa had let Ao Shui split a trace of her true spirit and reincarnate into the human race, becoming an ordinary human woman. Huasu. In the blink of an eye, several years had passed. On this day, the human girl Huasu was playing in the old land of the Thunderlock. She saw a huge footprint and stepped on it out of curiosity. The essence of the Thunderlock surged up, and the girl felt pregnant. At the same time, Feng Zichen, who was concentrating on deducing the secrets of heaven in the Emperor Star, suddenly felt a blood connection. Chapter 540. How could this be? When he came back to his senses, Feng Zichen's face was full of disbelief. He had a descendant of his bloodline? But how was this possible? An existence like him would never be able to give birth to a descendant unless he did it deliberately. At Feng Zichen's cultivation level, if he couldn't even completely control his own body, then what was the point of cultivating? It was so embarrassing. Therefore, Feng Zichen was sure that he, Chang'e, and Ao Shui definitely didn't have a descendant. But what was going on now? The throbbing that came from his bloodline couldn't be faked. With doubts in his heart, Feng Zichen's divine consciousness followed the connection and looked in the direction of the bloodline. That is, Ao Shui. What he saw was a woman from the human clan who looked exactly the same as Ao Shui. No, it's not Ao Shui. Ao Shui's cultivation level isn't that weak. Moreover, Ao Shui is a dragon, not a human. Seeing this woman's appearance, Feng Zichen subconsciously thought that she was Ao Shui. But on second thought, he felt that something was wrong. Not to mention Ao Shui's cultivation level, she was currently cultivating in seclusion in Emperor Hua's palace. How could she appear in the human race, let alone in the appearance of an ordinary human woman? However, this woman who looked like Ao Shui was indeed carrying a creature with her bloodline. The feeling of a bloodline connection came from this woman's stomach. But what was going on here? Looking at this woman's age, she was only in her 20s. Feng Zichen had never even seen her before, let alone had sex with her. Heavenly Dao Divine Eye. Open. As soon as he finished speaking, Feng Zichen's purple eyes suddenly bloomed with light, as if countless Dao patterns were born and destroyed within. In an instant, everything was different. The woman's identity was also clearly reflected in Feng Zichen's eyes. Ao Shui. At that moment, Feng Zichen confirmed that the person in front of him was Ao Shui. To be more precise, it was Ao Shui's clone. Phew! Taking a deep breath, Feng Zichen forced himself to calm down and think carefully about what had happened. As he calmed down, his sharp intuition returned to him once again. All the details about this matter gradually unfolded in his heart. At the same time, Nua's method of concealing the heavenly secrets was also beginning to lose its effectiveness. He understood everything now. Everything was clearly displayed in front of Feng Zichen. I see. After understanding what was going on, Feng Zichen's expression became extremely strange. All kinds of complicated expressions intertwined on his face and finally turned into a helpless sigh. This matter. It was Nua's doing. In order to stabilize Fuxi's position as the Heavenly Emperor, she had really put in a lot of effort. She had even reached the point where she would do anything. Nua was worried that a wisp of torch flame and an imperial purple chi would not be enough to stabilize Fuxi's position. Therefore, she turned her attention to Feng Zichen. If he was the son of the human emperor, then Fuxi's position should be completely stabilized. That was what Nua thought, and in fact, that was what she did. However, the son of the human emperor was not so easy to be born. Not everyone was qualified to be pregnant with the human emperor's son. Nua thought about it and finally found a suitable candidate. That was Ao Shui. In fact, in terms of identity, Wang Shu was more suitable. She was the recognized empress of the human race. However, in terms of relationship, Nua and Ao Shui's relationship was far better than Wang Shu's. In addition, in her heart, Nua still felt a little guilty towards Ao Shui. Back then, she was the one who forced Ao Shui to take the initiative to leave Feng Zichen. Therefore, based on the above considerations, Nua chose Ao Shui. He handed over the matter of this great opportunity to him. That's right. The Heavenly Emperor's mother. Wasn't this a great opportunity? Besides, with the relationship between Ao Shui and Feng Zichen, even if Feng Zichen was dissatisfied after the incident, she would not dare to say anything. In fact, it was just as Nua had thought. Even if Feng Zichen was angry now, he did not dare to vent his anger on Ao Shui. He even had to comfort her while enduring it. He was really as depressed as he could be. Sigh. I don't know how Nua convinced Ao Shui. How did she make Ao Shui agree to accompany her to mess around? Moreover, there's one more thing. F*ck, noun, a kind of plant. I don't know who was so bored back then to collect the true dragon's bloodline that he had shed out of his body. F*ck, don't let me find out who it was. Otherwise, I'll definitely teach you a lesson. At this moment, Feng Zichen's heart could be said to be holding back a huge ball of fire. Anyone who had been schemed against and had a son out of thin air would not be in a good mood. Especially when he knew the origin of the connate essence chi that appeared in the Thunder Lock. He was in an even worse mood. After being in the primordial world for so long, how could Feng Zichen not know the magic of the primordial world? It was all thanks to Pangu that everything could transform in the primordial world. There was nothing that could not be done in the primordial world. Even a drop of blood, a strand of hair, or even a drop of tears of an expert, as long as it fell on the connate chi, there was a great chance that it would transform into a human form. It was because of this reason that for a certain period of time, in the primordial world, from time to time, there would be mighty figures who were looking for their relatives. For this reason, those mighty figures had no choice but to have more children or disciples. Under such circumstances, until everyone was prepared, only then would they be able to improve. After knowing this, how could Feng Zichen not be prepared? Early on, after his cultivation had reached the large success stage, he had used a method to cause everything on his body to lose all vitality after leaving his body. Yes, the rest of the great divines were doing the same. These were all lessons. Unfortunately, Feng Zichen had calculated everything, but he forgot that back then, he had shed a part of his bloodline in the Dragon Gate. That was the blood of a true dragon that belonged to him. At that time, Feng Zichen had successfully leaped through the Dragon Gate. A mysterious force had descended and wanted to transform him into a true dragon body. However, at that time, he was thinking about Pangu's Dao body and did not want to transform into a dragon. Therefore, He had expelled all the blood of a true dragon from his body. At that time, Feng Zichen could be said to be a novice in the cultivation world. He did not know anything. After expelling the blood of a true dragon from his body, he did not care about it anymore. However, he did not expect that the blood of a true dragon would be preserved by someone. After that, for some reason, this blood fell into the hands of Nuwa. Nuwa used this blood to make Ao Shui pregnant with Feng Zichen's child. Although this part of the bloodline was the blood of a true dragon, it was real. It flowed out of Feng Zichen's body. It was his bloodline. Sigh! How troublesome. Although he was unwilling, Feng Zichen could not ignore Ao Shui. He could only divide a wisp of his divine consciousness to pay attention to her to prevent any accidents. As for this son, it did not matter if he acknowledged him. Anyway, when Fushi's true spirit awakened, all karma would be severed. Did he really think that the reincarnation of a human was to be his son? He was just using his identity. After dividing a wisp of his divine consciousness to pay attention to Ao Shui, Feng Zichen continued to deduce the secrets of heaven in seclusion. After a series of deductions, he still vaguely calculated that the cause of the change did not come from within the primordial world, but from the chaos demon gods. However, the current chaos demon gods were divided into two groups. There were few but powerful chaos demon gods. They were now in the great chaos outside the realm. There were many of them. However, the weaker chaos demon gods. They were now in the 3,000 greater worlds. At this moment, what Feng Zichen wanted to calculate was whether this change came from the 3,000 greater worlds or from the great chaos outside the realm. These two forces. Although they were both chaos demon gods, it was completely different to deal with them. If he didn't figure out which side made the move, it would be difficult to carry out targeted defenses. That's right. In the war with the chaos demon gods, the primordial world had always been in a defensive state. It was because compared to the primordial world, the chaos demon gods were too ancient. The time that the primordial world existed was just a relatively eye-catching wave in the long years that the chaos demon gods had experienced. For Daluo Jingxian and the experts above, time was not very important. However, when time reached a certain extent, it became especially important. In fact, in Feng Zichen's heart, he was more inclined to believe that the crisis came from the great chaos outside the realm. However, guesses were guesses after all. They could not be practical. Otherwise, if he were to make a mistake, the losses that would be caused would be enormous. What if both sides attacked at the same time? Everything had to be prepared for the worst. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, 12 years had passed. Huaxi was pregnant for 12 years and finally gave birth to a baby boy. However, this baby boy was different from ordinary people. He had 2 horns on his head, a human body, and a dragon tail. He was born with a connate Dao aptitude. Fuxi was born. The birth of the heavenly emperor was naturally no small matter. Endless divine light rose from Fuxi's body and illuminated the entire primordial world. It was enough to compete with the sun. All kinds of phenomena appeared. The great Dao rumbled incessantly, as if celebrating the birth of Fuxi. Of course, these phenomena, only immortals could see them. Originally, according to the legends of later generations, after Huaxu gave birth to a monster, she would be expelled from the tribe and left to fend for herself. However, the current human race was completely different. According to Feng Zichen's request back then, every tribe of the human race had to have at least one golden immortal as the overseer. This matter was recorded by Feng Zichen in the torch. Even if the civilization of the human race was cut off, as long as the torch was not extinguished, future generations would naturally know about it. Even the current human race was far less powerful than the ancient Lich and Demon era. It was impossible for every tribe to have a golden immortal overseeing it. However, they could still take out a mystic immortal and several heaven immortals. The tribe that Huaxu was in had 1 mystic immortal and 4 heaven immortals overseeing it. They were so close, so they naturally saw the phenomenon on Fuxi's body. They were instantly shocked. Oh no! It was a heavenly being. Actually, even if they did not see the phenomenon, it did not matter. To be able to cultivate the immortal Dao, one had to have at least good eyesight. Fuxi had a human body and a dragon tail. His entire body was like the word Dao. The characteristics of the connate Dao aptitude were so obvious. If they could not recognize it, it would seem a little fake. Knowing that Fuxi was not simple, the tribe leader sent someone to inform the ancestral land and brought the mother and son back to settle them down. However, before the people from the ancestral land arrived, an old man riding a bull arrived outside the Huashu tribe. The Grand Pure One had arrived. The prosperity of the human race was extraordinary. In order to prevent any accidents, the Grand Pure One decided to personally come and take in Fuxi as his disciple. Of course, this was all said to the outside world. The real reason was that other than the Grand Pure One, no one else from the three sects was qualified to teach Fuxi. No matter what, Fuxi was still the top great divine ability of the primordial world and the elder brother of Nuwa. If he arranged for a second-generation disciple to take in Fuxi as his disciple, whose face would that slap be? He reckoned that before that disciple could reach Fuxi, he would be beaten into ashes by the furious Nuwa. Therefore, the Grand Pure One had no choice but to appear personally. The identity of the leader of the Six Saints was enough to teach Fuxi. Presumably, Nuwa would not be dissatisfied. Although the human experts could not recognize the true background of the Grand Pure One, they could tell that the old man in front of them was not simple from the connate Dao runes that filled his body and the extraordinary green bull that he was sitting on. In that case, everyone was happy to see that he wanted to take Fuxi as his disciple. How could they refuse? After that, Fuxi followed the Grand Pure One and began his academic career. As for Feng Zichen, he held the Zichen sword and pointed it at the northern underworld demon palace. It was time for Fuxi's Dao confirmation treasure, the He Tu and the Luo Shu, to be taken back from Kuan Peng. To Feng Zichen, taking back the He Tu and the Luo Shu was not only for Fuxi. His significance to the human race was even greater. Although the He Tu and the Luo Shu was Di Jun's lifelong numinous treasure, he represented the primordial water vein. If the human race obtained this treasure, they would be able to obtain the destiny of the primordial water vein. The benefits were self-evident. In addition, it was said that the He Tu and the Luo Shu were Di Jun's lifelong numinous treasures and the most important numinous treasures. If he could snatch these two treasures away, Di Jun's strength would definitely be affected when he returned in the future. With so many benefits, how could Feng Zichen not take back the He Tu and the Luo Shu? Moreover, this matter was not difficult for Feng Zichen. Back then, Kuan Peng was not his match. Now it was even more so. Therefore, Feng Zichen planned to use peaceful means before resorting to force. He would first explain the details to Kuan Peng and ask for the He Tu and the Luo Shu. If he did not know what was good for him, it would not be too late to snatch it by force. Fellow Taoist Kuan Peng, how's your comprehension of the He Tu and the Luo Shu? Have you comprehended any of its mysteries? In the Demon Master Palace, Patriarch Kuan Peng, who was in seclusion to comprehend the He Tu and the Luo Shu, suddenly heard Feng Zichen's voice. It's you, Zichen clan. You are indeed still alive and have escaped from the seal set by Tai. Hearing this familiar voice, Patriarch Kuan Peng immediately recognized the identity of the person who spoke. Haha, fellow Taoist Kuan Peng, long time no see. Amidst the laughter, Feng Zichen came out with his sword. However, his body was extremely illusory. Obviously, it was not his real body. Yes, it's really been a long time. Looking at Feng Zichen, Patriarch Kuan Peng had a complicated expression. Chapter 541. To be honest, after seeing Feng Zichen, the Kuan-Ping ancestor was still a little surprised. Although he had already guessed that Feng Zichen would escape, it was another matter to see it with his own eyes. One could imagine the impact it brought. May I know what brings you here, fellow Taoist? The Kuan-Ping ancestor asked after collecting his thoughts. He must have a request for a visit. He didn't believe that Feng Zichen came here to catch up with him. Ha ha. It's not a big deal. I just heard that Di Jun's lifelong spiritual treasure, the He Tu and the Luo Shu, has fallen into your hands. Is that true? Feng Zichen said with a smile. Yes, the He Tu and the Luo Shu is in the hands of the poor Wei. Do you want to borrow it to take a look? Hearing Feng Zichen mention the He Tu and the Luo Shu, the Kuan-Ping ancestor frowned. He suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart, so he asked calmly. No. Feng Zichen shook his head and said. Hearing that, the Kuan-Ping ancestor was relieved. It was good that he didn't want to borrow the treasure. Otherwise, He really didn't know how to refuse. It was not impossible to borrow the He Tu and the Luo Shu. The Kuanping ancestor was mainly worried that he would never get it back once he borrowed it. Treasures moved people's hearts. In the face of the He Tu and the Luo Shu, the top innate spiritual treasure of the untainted world, even a saint would be tempted, let alone Feng Zichen. However, the Kuanping ancestor had just been relieved. Feng Zichen's next words directly made him angry. The poor Wei is not here to borrow the treasure, but to comply with the mandate of heaven. She is here to take back the He Tu and the Luo Shu so that she can send it to the destined person. Ignoring the Kuanping ancestor's expression, Feng Zichen said leisurely, "Borrow? How is that possible? Wasn't that leaving a topic for others to talk about?" If the Kuanping ancestor suddenly rose, he could use this reason to take back the He Tu and the Luo Shu. The human race couldn't say anything. After all, he had to return what he borrowed. Therefore, Feng Zichen directly asked old ancestor Kuanping for the He Tu and Luo Shu, and not borrow it. It was to block the road ahead of time to prevent future wrangling. Moreover, the He Tu and the Luo Shu did not belong to Kuanping. He had stolen it from Di Jun. Even if he wanted to borrow, he wouldn't borrow from Kuanping, but from Di Jun. According to this calculation, Feng Zichen was not robbing Patriarch Kuanping. At most, he was taking advantage of him. Fellow Taoist Zichen, do you think that the poor Wei is a pushover? After knowing Feng Zichen's purpose, Kuanping old ancestor's face instantly darkened. He looked at Feng Zichen with a gloomy gaze and said, "Sigh. Fellow Taoist Kuanping, don't be so angry. The poor Wei asked you for the He Tu and the Luo Shu for your sake. She was saving you." With a sigh, Feng Zichen changed into a sorrowful expression and said to the Kuanping ancestor. From his tone, those who did not know would think that he had suffered a lot. "Ha! For the poor Wei's sake. Are you saving the poor Wei?" Kuanping old ancestor was so angry that he laughed. He had seen too many people in his life, but he had never seen someone as shameless as Feng Zichen. He was clearly planning to snatch it openly, but he kept saying that it was for his own good and that he was saving him. It was really. Even Taoist Zhuan Ti was not as shameless as Feng Zichen. Fellow Taoist, don't doubt me. You think that you can sit and watch the chaos in the primordial world by living in seclusion in the North Sea, but that's not the case. You're already in trouble. Seeing that Kuanping old ancestor did not believe him, Feng Zichen was not surprised. He continued to speak in an extremely exaggerated tone. Fellow Taoist, don't be an alarmist. The poor Wei is living in seclusion in the North Sea, far away from the disputes of the primordial world. What danger can there be? Just as he said this, old ancestor Kuanping's expression changed drastically. He could no longer say what kind of danger there could be. Because not long after Feng Zichen finished speaking, an extremely dangerous feeling appeared in Kuanping old ancestor's heart. Kuanping old ancestor could not believe Feng Zichen's words. But he could not disbelieve his own intuition. Fellow Taoist Kuanping, I think you've already felt it. Yes, you don't provoke the tribulation, but the tribulation can take the initiative to come to you. Seeing Kuanping old ancestor's expression, Feng Zichen knew what he had felt. How could he not feel the danger? The He Tu and the Luo Shu were Fuxi's Dao attainment items. It was related to whether he could successfully attain the Dao. Feng Zichen was not the only one who was staring at him. There were also Nuwa, the three pure ones, and the others. It was related to the prosperity of the human race. Anyone who wanted to gain benefits from the human race would not allow Kuanping old ancestor to continue holding the He Tu and the Luo Shu. If Kuanping old ancestor really did not know what was good for him, then what greeted him would be the encirclement and suppression of the saints. Especially Nuwa. In order to let Fuxi successfully become the emperor, she had put in so much effort. If she was obstructed by Kuanping's fate could be imagined. As the former demon emperor Hua, Nuwa's personality was far from as kind as she appeared. She also had a decisive side to her. Fellow Taoist Zichen, I wonder where the poor Wei's tribulation came from. Fearing in his heart, Kuanping old ancestor did not give Feng Zichen any face. Instead, he asked in a tone of asking for advice. Fellow Taoist Kuanping, you have been in seclusion for too long recently. You are a little isolated from the news. You no longer understand the current situation of the primordial world. In the current world, the heavenly Tao wants to prosper the human race to replace the magi and demons as the main characters of the world. Therefore, the will of heaven manifested and gave the human race 3 supreme saint karma positions to strengthen the strength of the human race. After that, in the Purple Cloud Palace, after the discussion of the saints, they decided to let Fuxi reincarnate and become the emperor. Now, Fuxi has descended into the human race. And this He too and the Luo Shu is the Tao attainment treasure prepared by the world for him. If you still hold on to this treasure and don't let it go, you will be going against Nuwa, the 3 pure ones, and the Taoist priests. You will also be going against Tao ancestor Hongjun. Fellow Taoist, why don't you think about it? If you offend them, is there still a place for you in the primordial world? Feng Zichen first introduced the current situation of the primordial world to Kuanping Old Ancestor, and then analyzed the pros and cons of it to him. However, Kuanping Old Ancestor was stunned. Inside, why is there a teacher's matter? After a while, Kuanping Old Ancestor asked in fear. Although the Nuwa 3 pure ones were powerful, they were far from being powerful enough to make Kuanping Old Ancestor afraid when he heard their names. However, the Nuwa 3 pure ones could not, but Tao ancestor Hongjun could. It was precisely because he heard that this matter involved Tao ancestor Hongjun that Kuanping Old Ancestor was afraid. However, at the same time, he could not help but look at Feng Zichen suspiciously. He felt that Feng Zichen was lying to him. After Tao ancestor Hongjun merged with the Tao, he no longer cared about the affairs of the primordial world. How could he help the human race now? Fellow Taoist, the poor way is not lying to you. The 2 saints, Zhu and Ti, have been left in the Purple Cloud Palace by the Tao ancestor because they are preventing the prosperity of the human race. Before the prosperity of the human race, I'm afraid they can't appear in the primordial world. Feng Zichen felt that he was exaggerating. He quickly added, yes, there was nothing wrong with that. Zhu and Ti were indeed left in the Purple Cloud Palace by Tao ancestor Hongjun. As for the reason, he was indeed worried that they would stop the prosperity of the human race. However, there was no need to tell Kuanping Old Ancestor the details. It was enough to say the gist of it. Anyway, he did not dare to verify it with the person involved. What? Zhu and Ti were imprisoned in the Purple Cloud Palace by teacher. After hearing this news, Kuanping Old Ancestor jumped up in shock. The expression on his face. How should he describe it? Apart from shock, there was a hint of pleasure. It seemed that the pleasure in his heart was far greater than the shock. That was true. Kuanping Old Ancestor hated Zhu and Ti to the core. Seeing that they were unlucky, of course he was happy. Ahem. It's not imprisonment. It's to let the 2 of them cultivate in seclusion in the Purple Cloud Palace. Kuanping Old Ancestor said it so bluntly that Feng Zichen could not help but be speechless. Although that was the truth, he had to save some face for Zhu and Ti and the Tao ancestor. Otherwise, if the news of the Tao ancestor imprisoning the saints spread, Zhu and Ti's face would not look good, but the Tao ancestor's face would not be good either. A slip of the tongue. Fellow Taoist, don't blame me. It's purely a slip of the tongue. Kuanping Old Ancestor waved his hand and said disapprovingly. Fellow Taoist Kuanping, this is the situation now. In this case, do you still want to keep the He Tu and the Luo Shu? Changing the topic back to the main topic, Feng Zichen asked with a serious expression. Now that he had said this, if Kuanping Old Ancestor still did not agree, then the next thing would be to fight. According to fellow Taoist, if poor Wei continues to keep the He Tu and the Luo Shu, she will be an enemy of the saints in the primordial world? After pondering for a moment, Kuanping Old Ancestor asked in disbelief. Yes. Fellow Taoist, if you continue to keep the He Tu and the Luo Shu, you will face a disaster later. Especially Empress Nuwa, she will definitely not tolerate you. You must know that she and Fuxi are biological siblings. Feng Zichen said threateningly. To be honest, at this time, Kuanping Old Ancestor really wanted to hand over the He Tu and the Luo Shu. But he was unwilling. In order to obtain these 2 innate spirit treasures, it could be said that he had offended Di Jun to the extreme. But in the end, he had paid such a huge price. But in the end, it was all for his people. How could Kuanping Old Ancestor be willing to accept this? Fellow Taoist Zichen, if poor Wei hands over the He Tu and the Luo Shu, what can she get? After a moment, Kuanping old ancestor said with some hesitation. The He Tu and the Luo Shu had to be handed over. But he couldn't hand it over so easily. After paying such a huge price, he had to get some benefits back. Benefits? What benefits? Fellow Taoist, you have kept your life. Is there any greater benefit than this? As if he had been greatly frightened, Feng Zichen said with a look of disbelief. Kuanping old ancestor thought quite well, but unfortunately, he met Feng Zichen, this miser. He didn't want to pay any price at all. He only wanted to gain something without risking anything and trick the He Tu and the Luo Shu over. Since fellow Taoist doesn't have the slightest sincerity, then fellow Taoist Zichen, please go back. Kuanping old ancestor's face completely darkened, and he opened his mouth to send him off. He was also speechless. How could this person be so shameless? With just a few words, he wanted to get the He Tu and the Luo Shu. Was he dreaming too much, or did he think that Kuanping was a fool? Fellow Taoist Kuanping, aren't you afraid that the saint will find trouble with you? Seeing that Kuanping old ancestor didn't cooperate, Feng Zichen's face also darkened and he said threateningly. Fellow Taoist Zichen, do you really think that I, Kuanping, am a fool? Even if the saint comes and wants to take the He Tu and the Luo Shu from the poor Wei, he can't snatch it by force. Looking at Feng Zichen, Kuanping old ancestor said in an unfriendly tone. He was almost fooled by the other party. So what if he was a saint? Even if the saint wanted the He Tu and the Luo Shu, he had to discuss it with him first. In the end, if they really couldn't come to an agreement, they would fight. How could there be a reason to directly snatch it from the beginning? Seeing that Kuanping old ancestor didn't fall for it, Feng Zichen was a little embarrassed. But how thick-skinned was he? In the blink of an eye, he suppressed that embarrassment and said to Kuanping old ancestor in an extremely fierce tone, Fellow Taoist Kuanping, are you forcing me to make a move? As he said that, Feng Zichen pulled out the Zichen sword and pointed the tip of the sword at Kuanping. In an instant, a terrifying sword intent filled the air. There was an additional murderous intent between heaven and earth. Haha, fellow Taoist Zichen, if you really dared to make a move, you would have made a move long ago. Why waste your time talking nonsense with the poor Wei for a long time? Seeing this, Kuanping old ancestor was not afraid. Instead, he laughed out loud, as if he wasn't worried that Feng Zichen would make a move. Feng Zichen was silent. He really didn't dare to make a move. It wasn't that he was afraid of Kuanping old ancestor. Instead, he was afraid of an extremely terrifying existence hidden in the depths of the North Sea. Feng Zichen didn't know who that person was, but the aura he emitted was close to primordial Daluo Jingxian. Although he hadn't entered that realm yet, he was infinitely close. At the very least, he was a little higher than Feng Zichen's realm. But strength, it wasn't measured by realm. If Feng Zichen's original body came, he naturally wouldn't be afraid of the existence in the depths of the northern underworld. But now, he was only an avatar. Obviously, he wasn't a match for him. It was this person who had been staring at Feng Zichen after he entered the Demon Master Palace. If not for that, Feng Zichen would have snatched it long ago. Why would he still be there to trick Kuanping? Did he really think that talking didn't waste his saliva? What do you want, fellow Taoist? Helpless, Feng Zichen could only decide to listen to Kuanping's conditions first. But he was worried that he would ask for too much, so he warned, fellow Taoist, don't go too far. In the northern underworld, poor Wei is not without help. At the very least, she won't be weaker than the one behind you. Feng Zichen said, naturally, it was the black tortoise sacred beast. It was a pity that he couldn't walk out of the North Pole. Otherwise, Feng Zichen wouldn't be a threat, but a direct attack. Poor Wei doesn't have any other requests. As long as you lend the supreme divine ability, the Great Tao Furnace, to poor Wei to take a look, then poor Wei will immediately hand over the He Tu and the Luo Shu. Kuanping said seriously. As a great divine ability expert who specialized in divine abilities, he yearned for the divine ability that Feng Zichen had used back then, the Great Tao Furnace. If he could see the mystery of it, his strength would definitely be able to reach a higher level. Great Tao Furnace? Hearing this, Feng Zichen's expression couldn't help but be a little strange. Chapter 542. To be honest. The Great Tao Furnace itself was not a particularly difficult divine ability. One sentence, using heaven and earth as a furnace, explained the mystery of the Great Tao Furnace. His strength lay in the fact that the runes of the Great Tao were imprinted on it, allowing it to have unimaginable abilities. The runes of the Great Tao were a power that far exceeded the primordial world. It was normal for Kuan Peng to be obsessed with it. However, Feng Zichen did not want to pass it to him. That was a rune of the Great Tao. It was even more noble than an innate spirit treasure. If Kuan Peng could comprehend the mystery of it, his cultivation would definitely improve greatly. Therefore, why should he pass it to Kuan Peng? He did not have a good relationship with Kuan Peng. Wasn't this raising a tiger? Fellow Taoist Zichen, Poor Wei can swear that if you lend the Great Tao Furnace to Poor Wei to take a look, Poor Wei will form an alliance with you in the future and advance and retreat together. Seeing Feng Zichen's expression, Kuan Peng guessed his thoughts. He was afraid that he would refuse, so he hurriedly promised. Alliance. Hearing this, Feng Zichen's heart skipped a beat. This method was not bad. Although he did not have any great enemies now, Di Jun and Tai Yi would return one day. If he made more allies now, it would be much easier to deal with them in the future. Moreover, the true mystery of the Great Tao Furnace, it was not a rune of the Great Tao, but the mark of the Chaos Demon God on it. Without the mark of the Chaos Demon God, no matter how powerful the Great Tao Furnace was, there would always be a limit. It could not reach the level of refining everything. It might not even be able to transcend the scope of the heavenly Tao. With this thought in mind, Feng Zichen spoke. Fellow Taoist Kuan Peng, I hope you remember what you said today. As he spoke, he passed on all the mysteries of the Great Tao Furnace to Patriarch Kuan Peng. However, the mark of the demon god on it was hidden by him. It was no wonder that Feng Zichen was careful. In fact, the imprints of the 3,000 Chaos Demon Gods were his real foundation, and he couldn't expose them easily. Thank you, fellow Taoist. This is He Tu and Luo Shu. Please keep it well, fellow Taoist. After obtaining the Great Tao Furnace, Patriarch Kuanping did not go back on his word. He directly took out the He Tu and Luo Shu and handed it to Feng Zichen. Fellow Kuanping, now that this matter is over, Poor Wei will take my leave. After cupping his hands towards the rock ancestor, Feng Zichen directly turned around and left. This time, he was at a disadvantage. In truth, exchanging the Great Tao Furnace for the He Tu and the Book of the Luo was not a loss no matter how one looked at it. In fact, it could even be said to be a great bargain. However, the premise of all this was based on the fact that He Tu and Luo Shu had fallen into his hands. But now, it was clear that the He Tu and the inscription of the Luo were destined to be Fushi's. In other words, he had spent so much effort, but it was all for Fushi. How could Feng Zichen not be angry? But he had to do it. If someone else took the He Tu and the Book of the Luo from the Kuan Peng and gave it to Fushi, it meant that Fushi and the human race would owe that person a favor. A debt of gratitude. That was not a good thing. Who knew how much benefits that person would take from the human race with this favor? So, for the human race, even if he suffered a little loss, Feng Zichen had no choice but to do it. An expert from the primordial era? After taking a deep look at the bottom of the northernmost sea, Feng Zichen turned around and left. Those who could live from the primordial era to the present day were not simple people. The older they were, the stronger they were. In the primordial era, this was not a joke. This was true. If they were not strong enough, how could they live to the present day? Sigh. How troublesome. Just as Feng Zichen wanted to give the He Tu and the Book of the Luo to Fushi, he encountered trouble again. Who could he find to give it to? One had to know. Giving the He Tu and the Book of the Luo to Fushi was also a matter of great merit. This matter could not be taken advantage of by outsiders. However, Feng Zichen really did not have a suitable candidate. No, he did not have a candidate at all. His 3 disciples were still nowhere to be found. His main team was now trapped in the small primordial world. As a result, he did not have any available manpower under him. It seems that I have to find an opportunity to pass down my orthodoxy in the future. Otherwise, I have to do everything myself. Not only is it troublesome, but it will also be a joke if word gets out. At this moment, Feng Zichen could not help but have the thought of taking in a few in-name disciples. 3 personal disciples were more than enough. He could take in a few in-name disciples. Although his learning was messy, they could all be said to be exquisite. It would be a pity if they were lost. It was better to find an opportunity to pass them down. Just as Feng Zichen was looking for a suitable candidate to send the He Tu and the Book of the Luo to Fuxi, a huge problem had arrived. Chang'e no Wang Shu. He quietly arrived at the Emperor Star. Obviously, he had found out about Ao Shui. Let's not talk about Feng Zichen's trouble. Instead, Fuxi had already finished his apprenticeship. Now, under the leadership of the Yanzi clan, he was gradually familiarizing himself with the affairs of the human race. After a period of sharpening, Yi Zichen decided to give it a try. Fuxi officially took over the supreme power of the human race from the Yanzi clan. At this point, the Yanzi clan abdicated and lived in seclusion in West Kunlun. From then on, the human race entered the era of Fuxi. He created the early words and ended the history of the human races, knots to record things. He set the rules of marriage and established the marriage system. He implemented the system of male and female couples and used deerskin as a betrothal gift. He also used the animals he raised as his surname, or plants, residences, and official positions as his surname to prevent random marriages and close relatives from marrying. Thus, the surname of the human race began and continued. He also invented musical instruments such as the zither and the zither, created music, and brought music into the life of humans. He imitated the spider's web and made nets for fishing and hunting, increasing the production capacity of humans. Wait. Feng Zichen had done these a long time ago. But times were different. First of all, the civilization of the human race. There was a fault, these things were lost in time. Secondly, the environment of the human race was also very different. When Feng Zichen created these, the population of the human race was not as large as it was now. Moreover, all the human race lived on the coast of the East Sea. With a single order from him, these things could be quickly implemented throughout the entire race. But now, the human race had countless clansmen, and they were scattered all over the world. It could be said that they were all over the primordial world. How difficult would it be for a government decree to be passed through the entire clan? Fuxi was running around for this. He was the work of educating the human race. During his reign, he made the human race wise and polite. This was a supreme merit, so he was called the ancestor of humanity. On this day, Fuxi looked up at the clouds in the sky, the rain and snow, the thunder and lightning. He looked at the strong winds on the ground, the fog rising and the birds and beasts. He seemed to have comprehended something. However, he felt that there was always a layer separating him, preventing him from having a complete epiphany. While feeling frustrated, Fuxi walked out, intending to go out and relax. Not long after, he arrived at the bank of the Luo River. Splash! Under the Luo River, the dragon horse that had been waiting for a long time. After sensing Fuxi's aura, it immediately carried the He Tu and Luo Shu and floated to the surface of the water. Then, just like the legend, Fuxi looked at the He Tu and Luo Shu and created the connate 8 trigrams. He used this to summarize the laws of everything in the world, so that everyone could use this to calculate fortune and disaster. As for where did this dragon horse come from? Naturally, it was found by Ao Shui. Feng Zichen really couldn't find a suitable candidate, so he asked Ao Shui to find one. And so, tens of thousands of years passed. Fuxi's true spirit had already awakened, and his strength had recovered to the realm of Daluo Jinqian's perfection. His rule had also reached its peak. His kindness benefited every human race. Such merit was enough for him to ascend to the position of Heavenly Emperor. However, his merit only came from the human race, not from the 10,000 races. Therefore, Fuxi, the Heavenly Emperor, was the Heavenly Emperor of the human race, not the Heavenly Emperor of the 10,000 races. In other words, with this merit, Fuxi could become the Heavenly Emperor of the human race, but it was not enough to ascend to the Holy Karma rank. Therefore, Fuxi's next plan was to lead the human army and subdue the 10,000 races to become the true Heavenly Emperor and ascend to the Holy Karma rank. In the next tens of thousands of years, Fuxi mobilized the elites of the major tribes and formed an army. They practiced array formations day and night to prepare for the conquest of the 10,000 races. As a master of array formations, Fuxi's ability was recognized by everyone. The array formation that he took out was naturally extraordinary. The primordial river formation. This was the postnatal array formation that he had comprehended from the He Tu and Luo Shu. That's right. It was the postnatal array formation. It could be said to be the #1 postnatal array formation in the primordial world. This array formation was created by Fuxi according to the postnatal number. The entire array was set up according to the layout of the ancient mountains, rivers, earth, and other things in the primordial world. There were all kinds of things inside. If the heavenly cycle star array was the sun, moon, and stars, then the He Tu and Luo Shu were the geography of mountains and rivers, including the rivers or rivers of the primordial world, the ocean, the sky, birds, beasts, fish and insects, evolving the changes of the ancient primordial world. Moreover, the even more wonderful part of this array was that one could not tell the passage of time while in it. One could see the snow-capped mountains turning into oceans, and the vast seas turning into mulberry fields. The illusions on the river diagram were born and died in an instant. It was as if hundreds of millions of years had passed, and it was also as if countless tribulations had passed. Hence its name, the primordial river diagram. With such an ability, the power of the primordial river formation could be imagined. Moreover, as a postnatal array, in this special period, it must have received some support from the heavens and earth to increase the power of the array. If not, how could Fuxi let the primordial river formation become a postnatal array? The primordial river was all-encompassing, without restraint, postnatal and postnatal. In other words, the primordial river formation could be a postnatal array or a postnatal array. As for the specifics, it all depended on the situation at the scene. If the human race wanted to attack the 10,000 races, of course it was impossible for them to attack without a reason. In the name of vengeance, it was vengeance. To be honest, the so-called 10,000 races. In fact, most of them were former demons. During the period of the 3 races, there were only 3 races in the primordial world. They were the scaled race, the bird race, and the beast race. During this period, all the races in the primordial world automatically belonged to the 3 races according to their own characteristics. Thinking about it, with the strength of the 3 races, how could they allow the existence of other races? It was not until the 3 races fell that there was the saying of the 10,000 races in the primordial world. Not long after, the demon race appeared. Anything with a spirit could be a demon. As soon as these words were said, the 10,000 races in the primordial world had all become demons. Of course, Di Jun did not accept all races. Only the races that left their names on the demon summoning banner were true demons. However, because of that slogan, the races that were not on the demon summoning banner could also use the banner of the demon race and say that they were demons. No one could refute it. It was just that such demons could not obtain the support of the heavenly courts. However, since they dared to use the banner of the demon race, they could not blame the humans for using this reason to attack them. Who could guarantee? There were no real demons here. Besides, ordinary people really could not tell the difference between real and fake demons. For example, among the 10,000 races in the primordial world, there was a monkey race. This monkey race was also divided into the macaque race, the ape race, the Zhuyan race, and so on. Among them, the Zhuyan race and the macaque race were real demons that lived in the heaven realm. The ape race and the other races were fake demons. Those who had some understanding of the demon race could naturally tell the difference between real and fake. But for normal people, they would only consider the entire monkey race as the demon race. Therefore, according to this calculation, there was nothing wrong with the humans treating the 10,000 races as demons. The movements of the humans naturally could not be hidden from the 10,000 races in the primordial world. In order to protect themselves, the 10,000 races began to form an alliance. They planned to send an alliance army to attack the human race before the human race was ready to disrupt their deployment. It would be best if they could destroy the human race in one battle. It was a pity. The idea of the 10,000 races was good. But the 10,000 races in the primordial world were not an iron bucket. Among the 10,000 races, there were many who had enmity with each other. So, how could they form an alliance so easily? The various races wrangled with each other and attacked each other, causing the alliance to be unable to succeed for a long time. Until the human race was ready, the 10,000 races did not come up with a specific plan. Then, Fuxi advanced step by step. In just a few thousand years, he had swept through dozens of races. It was also at this time that the 10,000 races in the primordial world panicked. They had no choice but to temporarily put down their enmity with each other and form an alliance to resist the human race. With the combined strength of the 10,000 races, the human race was completely unable to resist. Not long after, the human race began to retreat in defeat. Not only did they lose the newly conquered territory, but they also lost a lot of their original territory. Seeing this, Fuxi knew that he could not defeat them, so he pretended to be weak. On one hand, he led the human race to retreat to the ancestral land, and on the other hand, he sent people to the alliance of 10,000 races to sow discord. The human race was defeated, and the alliance of 10,000 races had no external enemies. The internal problems that had been suppressed for a long time erupted. In addition, Fuxi sent people to sow discord. Not long after, the alliance of 10,000 races disintegrated. After that, the primordial world fell into a chaotic battle between the 10,000 races. When the 10,000 races were almost exhausted, Fuxi led the human army out to clean up the mess. At this time, the 10,000 races had exhausted their strength after many years of war. They were no match for the human race at all and were forced to retreat. When a portion of the primordial races saw this, they directly surrendered to the human race. There was also a portion of the primordial races who insisted on the glory of the primordial world. They formed the Primordial World Alliance and wanted to fight the human race to the death. Hence, the two sides started a long war in the primordial world. While the primordial world was in chaos, the distant primordial world was not very calm either. The Chaos Fiend gods had a new plan. Chapter 543. Outside the Gate of Liches and Demons, a few stalwart figures stood in the chaos, looking at the untainted land from afar. It seems that after so many years, the untainted land has walked out of the shadow brought about by the apocalypse and is gradually returning to peace. In that case, my fellow Taoists, it's time to put the gifts we prepared for the untainted land to use. Suddenly, a demon god said with a smile. Yes, yes. Those fellow Taoists have just broken out of the seal, and their cultivation is far from their peak. After being suppressed by the heavenly Tao, their lives in the untainted land must be extremely difficult. We need to give the untainted land a big gift to relieve the pressure on them. As soon as the demon god finished speaking, a few chaos demon gods beside him immediately chimed in. Then, they joined forces and took out a huge black ball of light. It was surrounded by violent chaos chi and chaos evil chi that could not be dissipated. It was a special treasure that the chaos demon gods refined with their bodies that were shattered by Pangu back then as the main material. It was a combination of the origin of chaos and the origin of evil chi. In the ancient times, the first connate ferocious beasts in the untainted land were derived from it. In this way, the intention of the chaos demon gods was very clear. They wanted to send connate ferocious beasts to the untainted land and start the ferocious beast tribulation again. Attack! As soon as they finished speaking, the chaos demon gods attacked the untainted land together. Rumble! Terrifying power erupted, setting off terrifying waves in the great chaos. Boundless ripples were formed as they blasted toward the Gate of Liches. Clang! In the face of the attack of several chaos demon gods, the Gate of Liches was broken without any resistance. The defense that condensed all the power of the liches and demons, as well as the seal that heavenly Dao Hongjun had cast on it, did not have any effect at all. The chaos demon gods were too strong. They were so strong that it was beyond the knowledge of the untainted land creatures. If not for their fear of Pangu, the untainted land would have been destroyed by them. Even though the Gate of Liches was a connate cardinal treasure, it was still not as strong as the barrier of heaven and earth. If it was broken, it was broken. The defense of the untainted land was not as good as before. With the current strength of the untainted land, the gate was the door for the chaos demon gods to enter and leave the land freely. Go! The moment the Gate of Lich opened, a chaos demon god struck the ball of origin of chaos into the untainted land. Not good. At the same time, Dao ancestor Hongjun, who was comprehending the great Dao in the Purple Cloud Palace, was possessed by the heavenly Dao. He carried Zhuan Ti and rushed to the Gate of Magi. Chaos is in trouble. The few sages who were paying attention to the human race sensed the change in the chaos and stopped paying attention to the human race. They all rushed towards the outer space. During this time, the sages naturally discovered the origin of primal chaos. The insight of a sage was extraordinary. He immediately recognized the origin of this item, and was about to take it away to prevent it from harming the untainted land. However, before the saints could do anything, the origin of chaos dispersed and flew to the primitive land with strong connate malice chi, merging with the earth veins. In that case, if the saint wanted to take away the essence of the chaos, the primordial world would inevitably suffer. However, this did not matter. Compared to the losses brought to the untainted land by the connate ferocious beasts derived from the origin of chaos, the untainted land could afford such a temporary loss. However, the chaos demon god would not give the sages a chance to destroy the origin of chaos. Before the sages could make up their minds, they started to act in the great chaos. Waves of chaos tides were raised by the chaos demon god and rolled towards the gate of Magi, intending to attack the untainted land. The sages had no choice but to join forces with Tao ancestor Hong Jun to suppress the gate of Magi personally to prevent the invasion of the chaos chi. In this way, the sages and the heavenly Tao's energy were involved in the chaos by the chaos demon god, and there was no extra power to interfere with the untainted land. This was the purpose of the chaos demon god. In the untainted land, the sages were simply cheating. Even primordial chaos zenith heaven golden immortals, or even those who were stronger than them, could not defeat them. As long as the sages were there, no matter how many connate ferocious beasts the chaos demon god sent to the untainted land, they would not be enough to kill. Therefore, in order to ensure the smooth progress of the plan, the chaos demon god had to prevent the sages from attacking. With the safety of the untainted land, it was the chaos demon god's plan to involve all the sages' energy. If the sages left the untainted land, they would definitely not be a match for the chaos demon god. And if the chaos demon god entered the untainted land, he would definitely not be a match for the heavenly Tao. Therefore, the two sides competed with each other across the gate of Magi. The sudden change naturally alarmed all living beings in the untainted land. At this moment, the human clan and the connate alliance, who were planning to fight a decisive battle, also withdrew their troops and waited for the next change. The group of great mediums also had a bad feeling in their hearts. However, no matter how they calculated, they could not find the source of the crisis and could not help but become worried. For a moment, the atmosphere of the untainted land, it became more and more depressing. It was as if a storm was coming. An opportunity. On the Z-Way star, Feng Zichen realized that the human clan's opportunity had come. Although the chaos of the connate ferocious beasts was a huge calamity, it might be an opportunity for the human clan. If the human clan could stand out in this chaos of the ferocious beasts that affected the untainted land, they could even quell the chaos of the ferocious beasts in one fell swoop. Then, the prestige of the human clan would definitely reach a peak in the untainted land. With this, they could justifiably ascend to the position of the main character of heaven and earth. The position of the main character of heaven and earth obtained in this way was the true main character of heaven and earth. And the main character of heaven and earth that was obtained with the help of the heavenly Tao and the schemes of the sages could only be said to be a puppet. Moreover, because of the chaos demon god, the sages and the heavenly Tao's control over the untainted land had fallen to a freezing point. It was a great time to cause trouble. His heart stirred slightly. Feng Zichen had the idea of causing trouble. However, he did not expect that this chaos of the ferocious beasts would be even more rapid and large-scale than he had expected. The scope of its impact and the magnitude of its impact were beyond the expectations of too many people. After the chaos origin merged with the untainted land, the connate murderous aura it carried immediately began to erode the surrounding earth veins and spirit veins. The spirit veins were contaminated by the connate murderous aura, and the acquired chi produced was no longer clear. Instead, it was accompanied by wisps of black murderous aura. If one accidentally touched it, even if they were lucky enough to retain their spiritual intelligence, their vitality would be greatly damaged. Under the influence of the connate murderous aura, it did not take long for the entire untainted land to be filled with murderous aura. The world was gradually filled with murderous aura. The increase in murderous aura would definitely bring about a decrease in spiritual energy. For this reason, the cultivation environment in the world became even more difficult. But this was not the most terrifying thing. The most terrifying thing was that as the murderous aura grew, the demonic path that had disappeared in the untainted land for many years gradually emerged. The current cultivation environment was suitable for the spread of the demonic path. The Taoist path grew and the demonic path disappeared. the demonic path disappeared. It was like a cycle. Many years after the celestial sect of wonders defeated the demonic path had a chance to prosper again. The situation in the untainted land became more and more strange. Time flowed like water. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 years had passed. After 1,000 years of nurturing, the origin of chaos had already given birth to many connate ferocious beasts. Normally speaking, even connate ferocious beasts could not have too much strength when they were just born. However, this batch of chaos demon gods was different. First of all, they had noble origins. They were formed from the remnants of the chaos demon gods. They were born with strong physical bodies, not inferior to Daluo Jingxian. Secondly, when these connate ferocious beasts were nurtured, the demonic path used some unknown method to connect them with the resentment, evil aura, and other negative emotions in the world. This made these connate ferocious beasts even more powerful. Many connate ferocious beasts were born with the cultivation of Daluo Jingxian. Fortunately, the heavenly Tao was fair. If it gave you invincible power, you were destined to lose something. Therefore, these connate ferocious beasts did not have intelligence, regardless of their strength. However, there were exceptions. Among the many connate ferocious beasts, there were always a few exceptions. Among them, there were 4 connate ferocious beasts. While possessing great strength, they also possessed extremely high intelligence. They were Tao Tai, Hun Dun, Cheong Qi, and Tao Wu. These 4 ferocious beasts were special creatures born from the fusion of the origin of chaos and the negative emotions of the untainted land. They were the embodiment of evil in the world. From the moment they were born, they had the power of a sage-to-be. As the situation in the untainted land became more chaotic, their strength became stronger. There was another point that was especially important. As the embodiment of evil in the world, unless there was no evil in the untainted land, they were immortal existences. There was no way to completely kill them. Even if their bodies and true spirits were completely refined into flying ashes, as long as there was evil in the untainted land, they could be resurrected at any time. This was a monster born from the resentment of all living beings. It was born with the untainted land. Other than not being as powerful as the saints, there was almost no difference. The untainted land's great mediums, as well as the human clan and the connate alliance, were not fools. After seeing the birth of the connate ferocious beasts, they immediately killed them. Even if the 4 great ferocious beasts were born, they were no match for them at all. Other than being shocked by their strength at the beginning, after that, it was easy to kill them. However, at this moment, no one knew that the 4 great ferocious beasts were immortal existences. Otherwise, the crowd would not have killed them, but sealed them when they had just been born and their cultivation was at its weakest. Given the vastness of the untainted land, the number of connate ferocious beasts could be said to be endless. In order to prevent the connate ferocious beasts from wreaking havoc in the untainted land, the human tribe and the connate alliance had no choice but to set aside their enmity and join forces to suppress the connate ferocious beasts. Even the great adepts came out to help from time to time. However, this method was still fine in the early stages. However, as the number of Xiantian realm ferocious beasts increased, the human race and the Xiantian realm alliance gradually became overwhelmed. It was also at this time that the people of the demonic path gradually became active. They came forward to help the Xiantian realm vicious beasts and obstructed the encirclement plan of the humans and the Xiantian alliance. In fact, they even used the same trick again. The high-level officials of both sides instigated the relationship between the two sides, intending to start another war. In the early stages, the demonic path took advantage of the pervasive baleful aura and the restless hearts of the people to succeed. The human race and the innate alliance did have some friction because of this. Several wars broke out and there were even signs of a complete falling out. It was only when Fuxi discovered that something was wrong that he took advantage of the meeting between the two sides. He used the Xiantian 8 trigrams to deduce the heavenly secrets and forcefully pulled out several demonic Tao spies from the two sides. Only then was the relationship between the two sides restored. However, this move by the demonic path, it could be said that he had offended both sides. In the future, when eliminating the Xiantian realm vicious beasts, both sides also eliminated the demonic path. It was at this time that all kinds of Tao techniques and supernatural powers against the demonic path were developed. However, the human race and the Xiantian alliance, which were already weak, were even more powerless against the demonic path in addition to dealing with the Xiantian realm vicious beasts. As a result, the Xiantian realm vicious beasts gradually showed signs of overflowing. However, soon the human race and the Xiantian alliance were freed up. That was because the third-generation disciples of the Xian sect had arrived. The demonic path had created chaos in the primordial world, so the disciples of the Xian sect naturally had to take action to subdue the demons to defend the dignity of the Xian sect. Under the leadership of the Nine Heavens Celestial Lord Xianqing, the disciples of the three sects and the disciples of the Xian sect's great magicians all came out to kill the people of the demonic path. Even the Haotian Jade Pool also sent an army from the heavenly court to quell the chaos in the primordial world. All the forces took action together to suppress the demonic path and the Xiantian realm vicious beasts. The primordial world gradually showed signs of peace. However, at this moment, a sudden change completely reversed the situation of the primordial world. The situation that the major forces of the primordial world had created with great difficulty all turned into flowing water overnight. The chaos of the Xiantian realm vicious beasts had completely erupted. All living beings were in danger. And this shocking change, it had something to do with the great magicians. Almost at the same time, most of the great magicians in the primordial world, except for a few, were attacked by the Chaos Demon Gods. Back then, the Chaos Demon Gods broke out of the seal and after a big battle with everyone, they all went to the Great Wide World. However, only the main bodies of the Chaos Demon Gods went to the Great Wide World. A part of their true spirits chose to stay in the primordial world and sneak into the Blessed Enclave, waiting for an opportunity to take action. No one knew what method those Chaos Demon Gods had used to hide in their Taoist rites in such an arrogant manner without being detected by the powerful masters of divine arts. The Chaos Demon Gods had always wanted to possess the great magicians to replace their status and lurk in the primordial world to plan something big. However, they had no chance, so they did not take action for a long time. Seizing the body of a great divine ability was not a simple matter. The most troublesome thing was not the resistance of the great magicians, but how to hide from the heavenly way. The heavenly way was monitoring the primordial world all the time, especially the great magicians who could destroy the stability of heaven and earth. They were the key targets of the heavenly way's surveillance. Therefore, every great magician could not escape the perception of the heavenly way when something happened to him. It was for this reason that the Chaos Demon Gods did not dare to attack the great magicians easily. If they were discovered by the heavenly way before they could be proud of themselves after successfully possessing the great magicians, they would be killed. What a loss that would be! Therefore, the Chaos Demon Gods had to bear with it for the time being and secretly spy on the great magicians, waiting for an opportunity. You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.